All right, readers by eyes and by ears, we are back with Remnants of Filth, Volume 7, also known as Yu by Rou Bao or simply Meatbun. And although I wasn't able to get very far in the last video, I'm hoping I can get a little bit further today. So I don't know how long I'll go. All I know is I will do what I can. And at least it starts at chapter 192. So I hope you all enjoy. I don't even know if I feel like I can say that, but nevertheless, enjoy. Chapter 192, Bygone Oath. Tearing out the soul, forging the key. It was like a nightmare, like drifting through hell. Morsi didn't know how he managed it. It was like he had already died. His own soul seemed to be floating at the top of the tent, fluttering as it looked down on the two people within. He saw everything he did, saw Goo Mahn's blood streaming from his chest when his soul was taken. He saw the man whose soul was being torn out, telling him again and again, "It's okay, it's okay." Many years ago, Goo Shushong had grinned in front of the bonfire as he told Morsi that he hoped for peace throughout the 9 provinces, for everyone to be treated equally. To this end, he would willingly throw himself into the flame, be burned into ash. Now, those words seemed like a curse. The key was finally created in the form of a sapphire thumb ring held in Morsi's trembling hand. He folded it into Goo Mahn's palm, then used every healing spell he knew to treat Goo Mahn's wounds, trying to staunch the bleeding. But his tears still fell like beads off a string, streaming down his cheeks to mix with the blood. Goo Mahng coughed again and again. He should have passed out from the pain, but he kept those limpid eyes open by sheer force of will, staring unblinkingly into Morsi's face. He'd lost 2 mortal souls. The last of his memories and rationality were about to collapse and disappear. But pain was his longtime companion, something he'd been experiencing since the moment he entered Liao on secret orders. He could endure it, could look at his Morshudi with a clear head for a little while longer. Goo Mahng knew that in this lifetime, he could only be described as selfless where he himself was concerned. Toward Morsi, he had always been selfish. Goo Mahng had offered up all of his passion, his lifeblood, and even his souls for the equal world for which he yearned. But for Morsi, he had only left wounds and the pain of separation. Perhaps it was only in this moment that the Goo Mahng from 3 years ago on the verge of forgetting and the Morsi from 3 years later on the verge of leaving could have the sincerity and peace they'd yearned for all their lives. Morsi was still trying to heal the gash in Goo Mahng's chest when Goo Mahng caught his hand, the ghost of a smile passing over his face. "There's no need. Don't worry. Nothing will happen to me. Morsi, you know I won't die that easily. Do you think the King of Liao never tried to kill me? Do you think His Imperial Majesty never tried to assassinate me? They didn't kill me, but not for the reasons they gave. That my mutation was too severe and they didn't know what would happen if I died. They all tried it a long time ago, but in the end, they..." Goo Mahng coughed. "They failed. They knew I'd merged with the demon blood beast. Only at the time of its death would I meet my own end, so..." He paused to catch his breath. "Shudi, you don't need to heal me. Talk to me a little. I just want to talk to you a little longer, okay?" Morsi took hold of his bloody hand and pressed it to his cheek. At length, he choked out, "Okay." Goo Mahng smiled. He looked vibrant and a little feral when he smiled, even now. "What do you want to talk about?" rasped Morsi. "Nothing in particular." Goo Mahng raised his eyes toward the top of the tent, where a small patch of starry sky was visible. I really wanted to say sorry to you. Morsi, was I too selfish? I wasn't truthful with you about so many things while you've always bared your heart to me." Morsi shook his head. "You didn't have a choice. I know how hard it was for you to be a spy, to drift between lies and truth. When Goo Mahng turned his head, Moshi saw tears shining in the corner of his eyes. Shudi. He reached up to cup Moshi's face, but he hadn't much strength left. Moshi took hold of his hand and kissed it, bringing it back to his own cheek. Goo Mahng looked at him hazily for a while, eyes rimmed with unfading red. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing that needed to be said. Goo Mahng closed his eyes, tears streaming down his cheeks. I was still too cruel to you. You didn't have a choice, Moshi repeated, and I was willing to endure it from the bottom of my heart. I knew you had your own dreams. I knew what was on your mind. You've done so well. You've done everything you could do. It's just that we can't fight fate. Goo Mahng looked up again, staring silently at that little square of stars. But I've always been fighting against fate. I know. We didn't win. But did they? Moshi started. What? Those brothers who died in vain at Phoenix Cry Mountain. Did they win? Goo Mahng looked at him nervously, eyes welling with fresh tears. Did they get justice? In the end? His voice softened to a hush. What about Junxing? Did he... Though Moshi understood what he meant, it didn't make him feel any better. He tightened his grip on Goo Mahng's hand, turning to kiss him and nodding helplessly. Yes, you brought them home. They were never wrong in calling you General Goo. And Lu Junxing, he was never... Moshi hesitated, sorrow choking him. Was never wrong in taking you as his brother. You know about that? Moshi lowered tear-sodden lashes. I'm sorry. I never treated him well. Goo Mahng smiled. His expression was genuine, though his face was haggard and bloodless. He looked very much like he had in the past. Don't worry. Actually, Junxing was fond of you. Or he didn't dislike you. I know that much. And Mu Zhonglian, what about Mu Zhonglian? Did he wreck himself further? He did not. Goo Mahng looked relieved. He turned his clear eyes on Moshi, slightly cautious and uneasy. Moshi, in the years where I lose my memories, did it hurt you very much? At Moshi's silence, Goo Mahng said softly, I hurt you, didn't I? The light in his eyes wobbled, on the edge of shattering into lakes and oceans of sorrow. Moshi watched the brightness in his eyes wither, watched the stars in Goo Mahng's eyes go out. How could he bear it? No. Really? Yes. Moshi smiled, throat tight. He wanted to rekindle those bright stars, so he continued. It's true. Even when you lost 2 mortal souls and your memories, you were always good to me. You never, ever made me sad. That's all true. In my heart, I've always thought of you as a very, very good person. Always, said Moshi. The uncertainty in Goo Mahng's expression made Moshi ache to comfort him. You remembered me, more or less. I left you something. I left it with you, so you never forgot me completely. Wait a minute. Wait. Did Moshi give him the pouch? Oh my. Okay, Okay, as if to prove it, he reached toward his belt, hoping to find some token of love to give to Goo Mahng. But he had just come from the battlefield. Other than the reversal stone he had to take with him back to the present, he'd brought nothing else. As if he felt helplessly, his fingers grazed something soft. He looked down in the moonlight. What he saw left him stunned. It was the brocade pouch that held the reversal stone. He had been in such a rush to return to the past, he hadn't looked closely at the brocade sachet Jiang Fuli had handed him. Now he saw the pouch had leagues of dawn embroidered in gold, and waves of rivers and mountains picked out in silver, with a pendant of red agate crystal sewn beneath. This was... A distant memory stirred to life. It was the very same brocade pouch Goo Mahng had stubbornly defended during their reunion in Luomei Pavilion. Moshi had been furious the first time he'd laid eyes on it. Goo Mahng had held it so tightly and spoken to him so firmly when he said, "Someone was good to me. He was the one who gave me this brocade pouch." Morsi's blood ran cold. In a flash, he saw fate's design. He felt another pang of sorrow, a dark shadow passing over his heart. Unbearable bitterness filled his throat. It was all he could do to keep from breaking down in tears. The one he'd been so jealous of for giving Goo Mahng this brocade pouch was, as it turned out, none other than himself. The man Goo Mahng hadn't forgotten, even after losing his mind and his memories, was also himself. It had always been him. Only him. "Are you all right?" "It's nothing." Morsi pushed down his overwhelming grief, unfastening the pouch from around his waist with trembling fingers. He placed it in Goo Mahng's hand. Goo Mahng looked at it and smiled. "This is the love token? Through this, I was able to remember you, even after I forgot everything else?" "Yes." "Then I should leave you a love token too." It's going to be a cowrie, I bet. Let's see. He patted himself down, but a prisoner had few belongings. In the end, all he managed to find were a couple of little white cowrie shells. Calling on his weak spiritual energy, Goo Mahng inscribed his own name on one of the shells and handed it to Morsi. "For you. No matter what you face when you go back, I'll be by your side." He raised a hand to write Morsi's name on the other shell, for himself, but realized he was about to face Muzhong Lian, Muzhong Chun, and the hardest torture known to Chonghua. He couldn't keep a cowrie shell with Morsi's name on it. Thus, he only wrote the left half of the character for Shee, a peak like a leaping flame with a stroke on either side. The character for fire. Goo Mahng carefully dropped the cowrie shell into the brocade pouch. "This will be enough." He smiled. "I'll remember you." With this, all of Morsi's questions about the brocade pouch were answered. The wave of heartbreak crashed down upon him with devastating force. He recalled how, before Goo Mahng's death, he'd once opened this brocade pouch Goo Mahng so treasured. He'd seen the cowrie shell inside, mottled and stained, inscribed with the word fire. Nettled, he couldn't help asking, "Who gave this to you?" Goo Mahng had said he didn't know. All he remembered was that the person in question was very dear to him. "Morsi." Seeing his expression, Goo Mahng reached up and gently patted him on the shoulder. He knew his remaining lucid moments were few, and the time for Morsi to return to the future was near. He could feel his mind slowing, could see Morsi's body beginning to glow and blur. This was yet another farewell. He tried to comfort Morsi once more, as he had in the past, to encourage this hero who was about to return to the battlefield. In truth, they were both of them alike. They only wanted a home together. They craved neither fame nor military achievement. They hadn't chosen to be heroes because they found it in any way thrilling, glorious, or awe-inspiring. Rather, it was because they tasted too much bitterness and separation. They didn't want others to suffer as they had. That was all. "Morsi, go back," said Goo Mahng softly. He let his hand fall, taking hold of Morsi's fading fingers and using the last of his strength to give them a squeeze. There was no reply. Just as he thought the reversal stone's effects had prevented Morsi from hearing him, he saw that Morsi's shoulders were shaking. "Shudi?" rasped Goo Mahng. Morsi didn't say anything, as if some vital flame had been extinguished inside him. His silhouette, lost and shadowed, seemed to overlap in Goo Mahng's vision with that of the lonely youth who had first joined the academy. At the time, the Mo clan had fallen from grace, and his future was unknown. Morsi had sat alone, apart from the clamoring soldiers. Other than Goo Mahng, no one was willing to dirty themselves in his family's filth. No one gave that lost young master anything resembling a smile. Goo Mahng wanted badly to embrace Morsi one more time, to tell him everything would be fine. He was still here. He wouldn't leave. But he quickly realized he'd no right to say this ever again. Morsi had already lost his Goo Mahng in the future. there would never again be someone he could stand with against the world, someone whose hand he could take as they returned home together. "I'm sorry." Morsi closed his eyes, then shook his head. He had never been an eloquent lover. He was too formal and awkward, often failing to say anything remotely charming. He merely, in his clumsy way, understood Goo Mahng, respected him, and accepted him. At last, he silently picked up the little cowrie shell Goo Mahng had made for him. He tucked it into his lapels, in the spot closest to his heart, to keep it safe. He wanted to get up, as calm and upright as every other time they had parted ways, but in the end, he couldn't do it. As he moved forward, it seemed as if his bones had been shattered, his heart ground to dust, his organs plucked out. He doubled over with the unbearable heartache. Slowly, he sank to the ground. In that futile past, in this finale of utter defeat, he cried himself silent. His relationship with Goo Mahng had lasted almost 20 years, yet because of the difference in status between a noble and a slave, because of the conflict between a spy and a general, because of their gender, because of morality, because of this reason or that, it had never been respected. Their love was condemned to darkness and robbed of promise. In the end, Goo Mahng had chosen to sacrifice himself and could no longer return to him. But Morsi knew Goo Mahng had loved him for nearly half his life. As a spy for the Empire, General Goo had expended nearly all his passion and almost every drop of his lifeblood to keep his secrets. Of what was left, those remaining hints of warmth, those shattered bits of time and sincerity, he had given it all unquestioningly to Morsi. What Goo Mahng felt for him was no less than the loyalty, love, and selflessness anyone on earth would give their lifetime companion. Morsi was his dearest, his beloved, the only one in his heart. But because Goo Mahng was a spy, he didn't dare to. He had no way to write down his lover's full name, even secretly, to keep beside his heart. That brocade pouch that had traveled through space and time could only hold a cowrie shell with fire written upon it. It was the only love token they had. Beyond this, there was never anything else. Both of them wanted to speak, but at that moment, Morsi's vision went dark. The reversal stone had reached the limits of its power. It burned white hot in his hand. He couldn't help calling out one last time, "Goo Mahng!" Goo Mahng gazed quietly back at him. There were tears in his blue eyes, but he was smiling. In the last moment before he lost consciousness, Morsi heard hasty footsteps outside the tent and the voices of guards. "Wang Shujun! Greetings to Wang Shujun!" He would depart, and Muzhong Lian would walk in. The wheel of fate would spin cruelly along the groove carved for it, and Morsi would return to the bloodbath of 3 years hence. The reversal stone was a trick the gods had left for mortals. He'd traveled back to the past and hadn't changed a thing. In the final moment before he returned, he saw Goo Mahng holding that cowrie shell with half Morsi's name against his chest, against that place where the blood hadn't yet dried, the place closest to his heart. Goo Mahng gazed at him without a word, but his endless love was unmistakable in his eyes. "Morsi, little Shudi, go. Regardless of how broken my memories are, regardless of how much time passes, I'll keep my love for you in my heart. I'm sorry I can't stay by your side forever. I'm sorry I can't tell you everything without reservation. In the future, I'll hide things from you, lie to you, and walk alone toward death. I dragged you down and I failed you. I regret it so much, but I've never once regretted loving you. Go back, Morsi. I hope in the future, just like in my dream, we'll find each other again in the rain." Chapter 193. With you. When Morsi hazily came to, he found himself in darkness. His eyes were wide open. The ache in his chest, like a sharp awl, had pierced his heart. He could still see that last glimpse of Goo Mangh's face, smiling at him through the tears and blood. Morsi closed his eyes, hot tears streaming down his cheeks. But he wasn't yet done. Goo Mahng had offered up his blood, flesh, and bone in order to pave this path. Now Goo Mahng was gone, and it was left to Morsi to fulfill this unfinished wish on behalf of his beloved. Even if his pain already felt like death by 1,000 cuts, the jut of his throat bobbed as he swallowed acrid bitterness. Slowly, he sat up. Indeed, it wasn't done. This wasn't the end. Goo Mahng was no longer here, yet Chonghua still had Morsi. The 9 provinces still had Morsi. As long as he was alive, Goo Mahng wasn't completely gone. He would tend to Goo Mahngg's embers until the day he too died on this path. He looked around through reddened eyes. This place was formless, like the primordial chaos that preceded Pangu's creation of the universe. Morsi lay on a surface that looked like water, but he didn't sink beneath it. It would have resembled ice if not for the ripples running through it. He looked down and saw his own reflection. How strange. Curling ribbons of dark purple smoke drifted around him. The purple-black wisps floated from his heart and dissipated into the air. Beyond this, a massive ball of hazy silver light swayed in the distance. What it was, he couldn't quite make out, but its enormous silhouette looked a little like his holy weapon, Twentian. That is your weapon, the holy weapon, Twentian. A solemn voice sounded from behind him. Morsi whipped around to find a man in fluttering white robes standing at the boundary of the darkness. The stranger was tall and elegantly proportioned, with a majestic and commanding air. He was enveloped in spiritual fog, rendering his features hazy and unclear. One could faintly perceive that his features were well defined, his skin like cold jade, and there was a sharp edge to his handsomeness. Morsi was startled. This man had seemed to see into his thoughts. Who are you? There was no answer. Morsi rose and walked toward him. Yet no matter how many steps he took, that man remained at a constant distance, as if Morsi could never draw near. Morsi was already in a dismal mood and had no interest in wasting his time. Coming to a halt, he asked, "Where are we?" This time, the man spoke. "You are inside the reversal stone. The world inside the stone is outside the realms you know. It is a separate domain." Morsi closed his eyes, gritting his teeth through the pain pulsing at his temples. "You're the deity in charge of this stone?" "More or less. My identity is unimportant. I am merely a wisp of a deity's spiritual energy left behind to guard the stone. My true form is meaningless to you." So this dark, liminal place was actually divine. Morsi had lost all reverence for gods after the trial he'd been through. Facing this god of the reversal stone, he coldly said, "I have nothing to say to you. Let me out." The god shook his head. "You cannot leave." Overcome with sorrow and fury, Morsi snapped, "What else do you want?" Despite his offensive manner, this being of spiritual energy didn't seem to mind. He regarded Morsi with a faint melancholy bordering on indifference. "Morsi, there is no need to direct your hatred at me. Your fate is not in my hands. I'm no more than a shadow left in this stone by true power. You fulfilled the destiny embedded in this reversal stone, and thus I've achieved my purpose. In fact, you've done me a kindness." A kindness. The word caught between Morsi's lips and twisted into mocking laughter. His voice was hoarse, his scarlet-rimmed eyes spider-webbed with red lines. "All right. Repay that kindness, then, and do something. Whether it was Goo Mahng, Lu Dansing, or those nameless soldiers, forgotten by everyone. In these past few centuries, far too many have died." He gazed at that indistinct figure. "If you're a god, you should have seen this coming a long time ago." "Yes. Then why didn't you stop it? If you sit by and do nothing, you're no better than a demon." The god of the stone closed his eyes. It initially seemed he wouldn't answer, but after a moment of silence, he spoke. "Morsi, gods cannot save mortals. Gods can only light the way for them to save themselves. I've called you into this realm of this reversal stone to tell you that everything is about to come to an end. All that remains is the final step." "Huapuan has lived for centuries on Earth," Morsi said. "He's merged himself with demons and scarcely counts as a living person anymore. I returned to the past to destroy the power of the demon blood beast, only to be told that the reversal stone has no such power. Tell me, how are we supposed to save ourselves?" He pressed every question, and the god of the stone listened to every word. In the end, this wisp of spiritual energy let out a sigh. "I know your heart holds resentment and hatred. I won't try to persuade you otherwise, but—" He paused. "Huapuan is not invincible. His power is bound to the demon blood beast. I've called you here precisely for this reason, to tell you how to uncouple his magic from the demon beasts." Morsi was silent, jaw clenched to hold back his endless fury. "Fine, speak." "The key to this method," the god said, "is your understanding of what happened in your past." Morsi was stunned. "My past?" The god swept his wide sleeves back and pointed down at the water that rippled without wind below their feet. "Yes, a reversal stone reflects a person's soul. Your body is a vessel containing all the joys and sorrows of your life, all the love and loathing you've received. Everything will appear in the reflection beneath your feet." Morsi looked down once more. His reflection was a representation of him. The phantom whale represented his strongest weapon. But what was that black tea issuing from his heart? The poison thing. "That is the demonic poison Muzhong Chun implanted in your body." "Yeah, that." He remembered now. It was likely the controlling poison Mengzi had removed at such great cost. During the confrontation in the throne room, Muzhong Mengzi had reported that she discovered this poison curse when she rescued Morsi after Goo Mahng stabbed him at Dongting Lake. She had gone behind Muzhong Chun's back and extracted it. The price of this act had been the integrity of her spiritual core. She could never work the strongest spells ever again. It was as though all of Morsi's thoughts had been written out before the god's eyes. "You are wrong," the deity said. "It was never Muzhong Mengzi." Morsi looked up. "What?" "It was not Muzhong Mengzi who removed the poison. Your true savior cut into your chest to undo the curse, but he was deep behind enemy lines. Firstly, he couldn't let Muzhong Chun discover what he did, and secondly, there was no way he could stay alone with you under the watchful gaze of the Liao Kingdom. He coordinated with Muzhong Mengzi and asked her to keep this a secret." "Wait, what? Then why has she—" "Okay." All the blood seemed to rush into Morsi's head, ringing in his ears. What are you saying?" he asked, fingers trembling. "At the Battle of Dongting Lake, Goo Mahng stabbed you for a reason. He had discovered what Muzhong Chun did while spying in Liao. He lured you to the battleship and stabbed you, making certain you were unconscious. When you awoke, all you knew was that Muzhong Mengzi had rushed to the scene and brought you back to the camp, that she sacrificed her own core to heal you. But the truth is," the deity paused, "after you lost consciousness, it was Goo Mahng who brought you into a secret room of the battleship and removed the poison. He let Muzhong Mengzi break through on purpose and handed you over to her." Morsi's face was white as snow. His blood had frozen into ice, disbelief etched into every line of him as he listened. Goo Mahng was well aware of Muzhong Mengzi's true character. She'd never been as straightforward as she appears. She is an imperial scion with her own ambitions and schemes. But, although she is ruthless and cruel, she is not mad like her brother. Goo Mahng knew you would be a key source of aid to Muzhong Mengzi. She'd want nothing more than to win you to her side. When offered such a valuable gift for free, she'd certainly accept, even if it was dangerous. Morsi's throat seemed to be filling with ice. After a long beat, he heard a rough and raspy voice, so unfamiliar. He hardly recognized it as his own. "Mengzi was never the one who saved my life. Goo Mahng let her take the credit for it." "There was nothing else he could do," said the god. "He hoped to be subjected to your hatred, hoped that you would gain Muzhong Mengzi's protection, hoped that Muzhong Chun wouldn't control you in the future. He had no other choice." "Then Mengzi's spiritual core was never—" "Correct. She was never injured. She's a healer and the master of Shennong Terrace. It was a simple thing to simulate the signs of frailty. Only 2 people knew her secret, Mengzi herself and Goo Mahng. The god's voice was cool. It was she who sent ErHa to perform the interrogation when she saw that Goo Mahng was regaining his memories. Mengzi ordered him to prevent his recovery by any means necessary. Morsi was stunned. ErHa was acting under her orders. Yes, ErHa is one of Mengzi's men and a close confidant. The one who has been trying to prevent Goo Mahn's recovery all this time was none other than Muzhong Mengzi. Your gratitude was a tool she wouldn't replenish, and she couldn't be sure Goo Mahng wouldn't tell you the truth upon remembering the past. She made several attempts to corrode Goo Mahn's sanity, hoping he'd lose his mind once more. As long as his wits were lost, no one else would know who truly saved your life. Impossible, murmured Morsi. She had so many chances to harm him, but she always took such patient care of Goo Mahng. She even advised me to go to Lin'an in search of that master cultivator. Advised you? The deity scoffed. That childish heart of yours is naive, to be sure. The Yue clan's mishaps saved Goo Mahng. If all had gone according to Muzhong Mengzi's plan, Goo Mahn's mind would be wholly destroyed when you two found this grandmaster cultivator. The god met Morsi's shocked gaze. Morsi, did you think she would let anything happen to Goo Mahng while he was under her direct care? Yet she acted multiple times. The first was the assassination attempt on Muzhong Lian. The second was when Goo Mahng was recovering in the treatment room. It was she who appeared and told him the truth about the vow of calamity. She intended to break Goo Mahn's mind and make him lose control. She had almost succeeded when you showed up and prevented Goo Mahng from falling entirely into her hands. If she had insisted on carrying out her plan regardless and Goo Mahng had fallen ill on her watch, would you have not begun to suspect her? So, Morsi's chest felt tight. There was no fury in him anymore, only endless cold and exhaustion. If we had gone to the wilds of Lin'an, he murmured, we wouldn't have found the real Grandmaster Cultivator. That's right. You'd have merely found Mengzi herself in disguise, waiting for you two to take the bait. Morsi looked up into the sky and laughed bitterly. Mengzi. Even she had her own schemes. It seemed that throughout his adulthood, almost everyone around him was working for their own agendas. Whether through imperial machinations, conflicts between nobles, or mundane trickery, nearly everything he knew was false. Was the throne and the power it held really so precious? Was it worth toiling for a lifetime and sacrificing everyone else's sincerity to one's own pitiless ambition? He found the idea absurd. In the past few years, how many of the faces around him had he seen for what they were? Was a life full of lies and manipulation really worth it? Morsi, you mustn't think of it like this. Such a price may not be worth it to you, but for Muzhong Chen and Muzhong Mengzi, it very much is, said the god. You are too honest, while Goo Mahng is too idealistic. Men like you might become saints, but it would be hard for you to be rulers. Morsi closed his eyes, murmuring wearily. Muzhong Mengzi wants to become a ruler. No, she wants far more than the throne of Chonghua. The heavens didn't grant her this fate, so she seized it for herself. Rare is the monarch who is pure and clean. So it's always been, since antiquity. Mengzi is ruthless indeed, but, he paused, for a ruler, ability and wisdom are most crucial. All else is less so. Perhaps it is cruel and unfair, but people wear 1,000 faces, and everyone has their own strengths. Without touching on matters of right or wrong, I can say with confidence that this person is more suited to ruling the nation than Muzhong Chen, Muzhong Lian, Goo Mahng, or even you. The god of the stone took in Morsi's silence for a moment before continuing. Now that you know of this, he swept his sleeves aside, gazing at Morsi through the cool mist. Morsi, once you return, will you seek her out for revenge? 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, everything in Morsi's heart had been clearly separated into black and white. His emotions were distinctly defined as love or hatred, as if everything on earth could be fairly deemed right or wrong. He knew now that there was much in the world that was not ideal, much that blurred the lines of good and evil. Yet his Gu Shishong had always told him that no matter what others did, no matter if fate was fair, one had to follow their own conscience above all. Even in the harshest frost in the dead of winter, there were still plum blossoms that fought against the snow and pines that stood tall and unbent in the wind. To remain unchanged by fame or power, by suffering or hardship, by eternal night or even death, that was the meaning of remaining true to oneself. The god waited. When Morsi didn't answer, he pointed again at the lake's surface. If you haven't thought it through, there's no need to give me an answer. Whether or not you seek vengeance, you may decide once you return to Chongqua and meet with her. I will now speak to you of the second important matter. What is that? Look at Tuntian in the water. Don't you think it's strange that your reflection features Tuntian's shadow? Tuntian is my holy weapon, said Moshi. Of course it would appear. Then where is Shuaizhen? Startled, Moshi looked up. Have you never wondered? The god at the stone asked mildly, why Tuntian would have such colossal powers of destruction, far greater than any holy weapon? A pause. In truth, Tuntian isn't a normal holy weapon at all. Moshi's eyes widened. What is it, a heavenly weapon? You already know that the previous emperor of Chongqua hoped to create a spiritual You already know that the previous emperor of Chongqua hoped to create a spiritual creature capable of fighting the demon blood beast using the forbidden technique left behind by Chantang. Everyone believed he failed. The late emperor himself believed this as well, but it was not so. The god's robes fluttered as he spoke, steadily. Among those who participated in the crafting of the spirit beast, some, like Muzhonglian's father and Zhouhe's father, never wavered in their faith in the old emperor. Others, however, saw how the emperor's greed was growing for more black magic. One of these men was your father. Moshi shuddered. In fact, they were successful in refining the spirit-blessed beast, but it awoke with a mind and only showed its power to the one it found worthy. The others thought its creation was a failure, but this wasn't true. They merely failed the spirit beast's test, and so never knew it had attained the form of a spiritual pearl. Your father, Mo Qingchi, was the only one the spirit beast acknowledged. The spirit beast appeared before him alone and acknowledged him as its master. Then it sorrowfully told its master a prophecy that came true. He would soon die in battle, and his family would fall apart. Only the strongest magic could keep his son safe, the spirit beast itself. Morsi took a step back. What? I knew this would shock you, but it is the truth, Morsi. When your father learned he would die, he sealed the holy beast's spirit pearl inside you, so that it would accept you as its master and keep you safe until you were grown. How else would you have such astonishing innate power? Your capabilities far exceed the scope of natural talent. They've been an anomaly from the start. Morsi trembled in recollection. He thought about the killing power of Tuntian that could level cities, the power he'd always held at bay. His fingertips were numb with cold. You thought Tuntian was a holy weapon you summoned after you were taught how, but that's false, said the god. Tuntian is the soul of the spirit beast Mo Qingchi left for you, and the source of your fearsome spiritual energy. The god of the stone stared into Morsi's eyes, speaking every word deliberately. The spirit-blessed beast has been sealed inside you all along. The only person on earth who can completely destroy the demon blood beast is you. His face was devoid of color. His eyes were wide as he stared blankly at the god of the reversal stone. As the god finished talking, the spiritual fog around him grew denser, obscuring his already blurred silhouette. His voice thinned and became distant, as if he was speaking across mountains and oceans. Moshi, it's no coincidence that the reversal stone chose you. Once I release the seal on Tuntian, you will have full control of the spirit-blessed beast's power, equal to that of the demon blood beast. At that moment, you will have two choices. You can choose to take revenge on Muzhong Mengzi, With the spirit-blessed beast, you can kill her, surround the city, and ascend to throne yourself. You can use Tuntian's barrier to protect the capital of Chonghua. The demon blood beast's blood sea will swallow the entirety of the 9 provinces, but Chonghua City will remain untouched. You could rule safely in your own land. Or, after waking Tuntian, you can choose to sink into the depths of the blood sea. There, you will find the demon blood beast's heart. If you use the spirit-blessed beast's spiritual energy to counteract it, you can destroy it, and the sea of blood will become an ordinary lake. Huapoan will lose his source of power and become a regular man who can be defeated. The 9 provinces will be saved, but... The god paused, his voice echoing like a bell. You will die with the demon blood beast. Thereafter, you will be excluded from the wheel of reincarnation, never to return to this world. This should have been cruel news, but it barely registered for Morsi. Over the past 2 hours, he had sundered Goo Mahng's souls and learned this god's wild revelations. It seemed nothing could hurt him more than what he'd already been through. The immortal mist around the god of the stone grew thicker, making his expression hard to discern. After a long span, he seemed to sigh softly. Of these 2 paths, no one will force you to take one or the other. I said that gods cannot save people. They can only light the way for mortals to save themselves. In the same way, gods will not force you to make a choice. You must choose your own path to walk. The god disappeared within the cold fog. Suddenly, Morsi felt himself shoved forward. The darkness broke apart into countless glimmering shards, fluttering and dancing before his eyes. He saw the past 30 years of his life flickering in these fragments. He saw Mo Tincture standing beneath the osmanthus tree when he was a child. His father's gauntleted hand reached out, smiling. He asked, "Little Fireball, what are you doing here?" He saw the first time he met Jiang Yeshui. That gentle and modest boy stood quietly by the palace terrace, speaking with his mother about something. At his mother's behest, he turned. "Hello, my name is Ye Yeshui. Are you the little Gongzi of Mo Manor?" He saw Mu Zhonglian abusing Goo Mahng in countless ways at the academy. At that time, Morsi hadn't known of the familial attachments buried in the depths of Mu Zhonglian's heart beneath his hateful jealousy. He saw Mu Zhong Chuyi striding haughtily down the corridor. He had once thought this person just as uncaring as the rumors made out. Only after did he learn of the vast compassion Mu Zhong Chuyi held hidden in his heart. He glimpsed the day he and Goo Mahng had turned on each other on the decks of that ship during the Battle of Dongting Lake. Goo Mahng, in black robes, walking toward him through the smoke and flames with Yongye in hand. Goo Mahng had been wearing one of Chonghua's merit ribbons, taken from a corpse. Morsi had thought this was Goo Mangg's insult to the heroes, rather than a sign of the longing Goo Mahng harbored for Chonghua. Goo Mahng had said darkly, "As a general, as a soldier, and as a person, you can't be too attached to past affections." But he'd later found out that Goo Mahng never once forgot those 70,000 gravestones or those 30,000 living men, in every second he spent in Liao. He never forgot his homeland, nor any of the cities in the 9 provinces. Morsi had once hated Goo Mahng for his cold-bloodedness and refusal to turn from his path. But in truth, Goo Mahng had never betrayed them or gone astray. He had forged ahead alone, hacking his way through the underbrush to blaze a new and bloody path. He had thought it was Goo Mahng who cut into his heart and Mengzi who saved it. But the truth was... Morsi closed his eyes. Bitterness and sorrow swept like a wildfire through his chest. It burned to the bottom of his heart, wetting his reddened eyes. The realm of the reversal stone collapsed around him. The countless voices and smiles, tricks and lies from the past crashed down like a mighty wave, a tide that pushed him out of this world. The words of the reversal stone's god seemed to echo in his ears, to take revenge and protect the city, or to throw himself into the blood sea. Of these 2 paths, you must choose. Even with his eyes closed, Morsi could sense the coming of dawn. He could hear the wailing of the women and children within the city, the bracing shouts of the soldiers, the metallic clash of fighting, the rush of the tide. He'd returned to the present. Once more, he found himself on the battlefield. 3 years later, He could hear someone shouting in the distance. "Deploy the left flank to provide support to Medicine Master Jiang. Hua Puan has gone insane." Jiang Fuli had already set out to fight Hua Puan. The medicine master stubbornly believed he wasn't Chuntang, yet he still walked into the war against Liao, bearing all of Chuntang's memories and wishes. Goo Mahng had said that everyone had their own duties to fulfill. Those duties might seem difficult, cruel, or meaningless. Perhaps they'd go unrewarded, or perhaps other people would take up the burden. Why should they be the one charging ahead? Better to spare oneself and hide somewhere safe. Many would think, "Forget it. My life is insignificant. I only want to find my own contentment." No one wanted to don the hero's mantle, but there would always be someone who stepped out of the crowd, who put away those personal grudges and thought, "My life may be insignificant, but as long as I can do something that improves this world, this nation, or even just this street, that would be enough." Goo Mahng, Mu Rongchuyi, Jiang Fuli, Mo Qingchi, all had chosen to walk a narrow path that others might scorn as foolish. Mo Xi knew they were waiting for him at the end of this road. He opened his eyes. That fading vision disappeared at last. His lashes fluttered, and he found himself returned to that side room. Jiang Fuli had gone. Dawn was breaking outside the window, a sunrise the vivid red of blood. He looked into the distance at the cultivators of Chonghua who refused to admit defeat, clashing once more with the Liao army in the clouds. The bright streaks of their mounted swords were like shooting stars falling to earth, charging toward the Liao encampment on the opposite shore. The demonic sea of blood that had claimed Goo Mangh's life lapped at the walls beneath the palace window. Mo Xi stepped forward into the dazzling sunrise, standing against the newborn dawn. He wrapped slender fingers around the railing as he stood in the wind, looking upon his devastated nation. He suddenly understood the destiny before him, a forking path that hadn't been preordained. All that was certain was that fate would present people with countless trials, feuds, mysteries, and misunderstandings. Very few could pass through it all and reach the shore they'd struck out toward at the beginning. He looked down at the roiling blood pushing past him and let the spent reversal stone fall from his fingers. "Shishong," he said quietly, "I choose the same path you did. Wait for me. I'm coming after you." Chapter 194. The Depths of the Sea. On the distant battlefield, the cultivators heard a deafening whistle. The world seemed to come apart as a colossal whale large enough to obscure the skies soared from a tower in the imperial city. That whale roared and howled furiously, its spiritual form larger than anyone had ever seen. Hua Puan, locked in combat with Jiang Fuli, looked up. This, Tuntian, unleashed by Mo Xi, no longer had the appearance of a holy weapon. In that glorious dawn, it took on its magnificent true form. It raised its head. The rain fell over the city. Every street was bathed in golden light, and a rainbow arced across the sky. "Huh, the spirit-blessed beast?" a soldier cried. Hua Puan paled. When did Chonghua create a spirit beast?" Jiang Fuli had been heavily injured, but still gritted his teeth and fought on. "Likely a long time ago. Hua Puan, you are the one who has underestimated the human heart." "The human heart," Hua Puan sneered, his expression dark and crazed. "In my lifetime, I've been a slave, a king, a guosher. I've changed my identity and experienced all manner of things. I've seen all there is of the world's unfairness. What good is the human heart? It's no more than the heart of a beast dusted with some gold, a wretched, useless thing." He narrowed his eyes. "Human hearts have always been as savage as those beasts. History is written by the victors. Because my ancestor made a mistake, his descendants were slaves for hundreds of years. I, Hua Puan, put my faith in slaughter alone. I've never underestimated the human heart. But you, Preceptor Chun, you're the one who put too much faith in humanity. You've always thought too highly of these people." He leapt directly at Jiang Fuli's chest. The strike angled for his heart, then twisted so that he struck Jiang Fuli's shoulder. Seeing Jiang Fuli at the limit of his endurance, Su Yurou wailed, "Fuli!" Huapoan's face was cold and fierce, his eyes glistening with bloodlust as he flicked her a look of scorn. "Shut up, you bitch! You seduced him and made him betray me. I haven't yet settled the score with you." "Guosher, spare him, I beg of you. I was the one who took him. I was the one who erased his memories. Even after he forgot everything, he still remembered that water-parting sword manual he gave you. A sword of 5 years turns the seasons. A sword of 10 years turns back time. This sword's edge sharp enough to part the waters. This life too short to part my heart from yours. It wasn't him who betrayed you. It was me." Huapoan's expression flickered with hesitation. Su Yuzhou thought only of Jiang Fuli's safety. Seeing him pause, she pressed on. He always remembered you. Please, don't hurt him. I'm begging you." "Don't plead with him," Jiang Fuli snapped. Finally unable to suppress the pain of his internal injuries, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Leaping a few yards backwards, he leaned on his sword and panted. "Hear this, Huapoan. It is better that I still have some memory of the past, but it is only because I loathe you. The only reason I remember you is because my hatred for you is etched into my bones." Huapoan narrowed his eyes, staring at Jiang Fuli in silence. A flash of fear seemed to surface within that madness and cruelty. Jiang Fuli's breaths were labored. "In this life, regardless of..." Oh God, he's finna hear the one thing he didn't want to hear. "In this life, regardless of whether I'm Jiang Fuli or Preceptor Chun Tang, I have only one thing left to say to you." The fear was stronger now. Huapoan's expression shifted as he shouted in fury, "Shut up!" He knew what Jiang Fuli would say. Those words Chun Tang hadn't time to voice before his soul scattered. For centuries, through every obstacle and opportunity, those words had echoed in the depths of his nightmares. The citadel of fear in his heart had weathered the storm of hundreds of years, yet today, Chun Tang's condemnation was the bolt of lightning that would bring it crashing down. Jiang Fuli gazed at him in the whistling wind, his expression containing both the cold indifference that belonged to Jiang Fuli and the grieving sorrow that belonged to Chun Tang. All the hair rose on the back of Huapoan's neck. His shouts took on a shrill note of panic. "Shut up! Shut up!" Jiang Fuli's lips parted. Those words of eternal goodbye that had remained unsaid for hundreds of years were finally spoken aloud in this uncanny reenactment of the past. "Huapoan, I'm sick to death of you." Huapoan pressed his fingers together, his expression distorting. He looked like he wanted to laugh out loud, or like some festering, centuries-old wound had been jabbed. His face had gone pale, and he stared oddly at Jiang Fuli, his pupils contracting. His face terrified Su Yuzhou. "Fuli, stop talking!" But Jiang Fuli went on despite her warning. "Back then, it was Chun Tang who brought you out of slavery, took you in as a disciple, and gave you the name Huapoan. Today, I come to take back this name on his behalf. From now on, you may be the Guosher of Liao, the king of Liao, a deathless demon. You may be whatever you choose to call yourself, but you can never again be Huapoan." A weighty pause. "Chun Tang has no disciple with this name." Huapoan's eyes were like two slashes of blood, their whites spider-webbed with scarlet. "Shizun," he snarled, gnashing his teeth. "This title is not one I can accept," Jiang Fuli replied tonelessly. Huapoan's knuckles were white. "Chun Tang, would you push me so far?" "I am not Chun Tang," said Jiang Fuli. "I am a walking corpse that you dragged out of hell. Nor are you Huapoan. You're nothing more than..." He paused, his teeth chattering, but still enunciated every word. "An evil dog. One he trusted in the biggest mistake of his life." Huapoan froze as if struck by an invisible lash. Pain spasmed across that face where only malice had flourished. After a long silence, he looked up and laughed, harsh and manic. "Very well. Very well," he shrieked. He tensed with rage, readying his next attack. But before he could strike, the massive whale swam out from Moshi's tower and rose into the skies. Amid shocked cries from the battlefield, the whale's form glowed with a dazzling, glorious light. Its call threatened to swallow the sky, and its massive tail seemed to touch the sun as it turned its nose and dove toward that surging demon blood sea. It's the spirit-blessed beast! It really is the spirit-blessed beast! General Mo can summon the spirit-blessed beast! Hua Poan had lost control of whatever sanity he had. His strikes grew fiercer and more frenzied as he bore down on Jiang Fuli. The crowd's shouts didn't faze him at all. So what if he can summon the spirit-blessed beast? At most, he can protect the imperial city and hide within it. That child would never go so far as to die for a country where his lover is already gone. To give his life for these 9 provinces filled with deception and machinations. To sacrifice himself for the nation that denounced his beloved as the worst kind of traitor. But before he could say any of this aloud, Mosi had ignited the blinding divine light of the spirit-blessed beast and followed Tuntian, diving into the ocean of blood. There was a sound like a great clap of thunder, and the heavens and earth trembled. The soldiers of the Northern Frontier Army cried out in grief, "Shihajun! General Mo!" Hua Poan couldn't believe his eyes. Had this person gone mad? Was he insane? After undergoing such suffering, having lost all his kin and everything he loved, after being subjected to such cruelty from fate, why would he choose to sacrifice himself for the sake of others? What did he get out of it? Why did he do it? Did this man harbor no hate, no selfishness, no desire? Who would make such a choice? In Hua Poan's moment of shocked distraction, Jiang Fuli saw his chance and swept out with his sword. Blood splattered as the blade sank deep into Hua Poan's shoulder. Hua Poan leapt backward with a grunt and looked down at the sinister gash, so deep he could see the white bone. Standing in the bloody wind of battle, Jiang Fuli hefted his sword and stared at the deathless monster Hua Poan. Hoarsely, quietly, with lips that dripped blood as they parted, he spoke. "You don't understand, do you? You never will." But, pausing, he ran a hand along his blade, radiance blooming in the wake of his fingertips. A gale rose around him, marking this final match against Hua Poan. "Your defeat hundreds of years ago outside Chonghua City will repeat itself today. Chen Tang wasn't the only person on this earth with the power to stop your wild ambition. The ranks of those willing to sacrifice flesh and blood to protect the people of this nation were never limited to Chen Tang alone." The surroundings shimmered with power as Jiang Fuli threw himself toward Hua Poan. At the base of the tower, a wave of blood surged up. Within the protective form of Tuntian, Mosi plunged into the depths of the blood sea. "Medicine Master Jiang! General Mo!" The battlefield was awash in shocked cries, but Mosi could no longer hear them. He had already sunk into the ocean of blood. How strange. In these last moments of his life, he felt as if everything had suddenly become tranquil. Peering through the field of crimson clouding his vision, he quickly located the heart of the demon blood beast sunk deep in that sea of blood. If he destroyed this heart, everything would be over. The blood sea would become a clear lake, and Hua Poan would lose his source of power and become a mortal who could be slain. As for Mosi himself, the words of the Reversal Stone's god echoed in his ears. "The 9 provinces will be saved, but you will die with the demon blood beast. Thereafter, you will be excluded from the wheel of reincarnation, never to return to this world." Mosi smiled faintly. No longer hesitant, he reached out and touched the pounding heart of the demon blood beast. Goo Mahng had merged with the demon beast, and Mosi had embodied a holy spirit. Yet they had arrived at the same destination in the end. Floating in the depths of the bloody sea, Mosi spoke to the beating heart before him. "Goo Mahng, this is the path I've chosen. Wait for me. I'm coming." He brought his palms to its pulsating form, light coruscating through his fingers. When the spiritual energy of Tuntian and Jingchen met, it wasn't with the fierce and murderous clash he'd expected. Perhaps it was precisely because the two hosts of the spiritual beasts had once been so deeply entwined that Mosi felt no pain, even as a violent undertow roared from the depths of the blood sea and dragged him down. He merely felt his vision growing blurrier, and his body lighter. A sense of freedom that came at the end of everything. As the demon blood beast's heart was destroyed, the blood around him gradually transformed into clear water, spreading outward like ink on paper. Slowly, the sea of blood became blood no longer. The scarlet pit swallowing the 9 provinces became flowing water that nourished the land. Shee choked up filthy blood. His spiritual energy was spent, and water was filling his mouth and nose. He could no longer breathe. He looked up, knowing he had come to his fated end. The reversal stone had given him 2 paths, life or death, and he had chosen the latter. Goo Mahng had merged souls with the demon blood beast, but he still managed to blaze with a lifetime's worth of light. Since Shee was the one fused with the spirit-blessed beast, how could he possibly lose to his Goo Mahng? A relieved smile spread over his face. Sunlight spilled down through the water like golden raindrops drifting around Shee. The glow grew brighter and brighter, as if a glittering storm was falling between heavens and earth. That sweet rainfall misted down in the gentle drizzle. The world was at peace. With that soft veil of rain, Shee saw a silhouette slowly emerge. He stiffened in shock. The figure strode toward him with an easy grace, his blue and gold merit ribbon fluttering on his forehead. As he drew closer, Shee could see his handsome, youthful face, his dazzling smile, his black eyes, his unmarred body. Beaming at Shee, he walked out from the depths of the lake. Goo Mahng. Shee, who'd thought he'd never know pain again, who thought he had no more attachments, felt a sob wrung from his throat. It's Goo Mahng. But this Goo Mahng wasn't the same man who fell into the lake. He looked as he had more than 10 years ago, the first time they had reunited on the battlefield, when Goo Shizun had stepped away from the bonfire and reached out toward the lonely boy Shee had been. Shizun, Shee rasped, the rims of his eyes red. Is it you? Is it your shade? Your soul? Or is this merely a final hallucination before I die? There was no answer. The vision of Goo Mahng walked up to him, just like he had all those years ago, just like when they were young. He reached for Goo Mahng's hand, muttering softly to his lover sinking deeper into the water. Shee, we're home. The war has ended. It's all over. Let's go home. We've come home. Chapter 195. Grand Finale. Shee, we're home. These soft words, full of finality, lulled Shee into slumber, then woke him from it. He didn't know how much time passed when he heard the patter of rain. A faint voice floated above the murmur of the water, singing softly. Though he could make out neither the tune nor the words, he felt this melody was grand and melancholy, like nothing he'd ever heard before, as if it come from the time of primordial chaos. Come home. When will they come home? He caught the words in blurry snatches. His lashes fluttered, and he slowly opened his eyes. Shee was surrounded by endless cold mist. A fine drizzle fell from the heavens and onto his cheeks, but it didn't feel wet. The drops seemed to disappear into nothingness the moment they touched his skin. Everything seemed to flicker and sway. He blinked. Was this the underworld? Looking around, he discovered he was lying on a dilapidated little boat. Someone sat near him, gazing at the reeds on the distant banks, cheek in hand. The moment Shee glimpsed his face, he bolted upright, blood rushing to his head. Goo Mahng? At the sound of his voice, Goo Mahng turned and flashed a smile. You're awake. Shee felt like he'd taken a heavy blow. The pain in his chest turned into stinging at the rims of his eyes. Endless emotions surged up in his throat, but he couldn't say a word. He sat in the little boat, wanting to get a look at his surroundings, but his eyes refused to leave Goo Mahng's face for even a moment. Perhaps sensing Shee's tumultuous emotions, Goo Mahng rose from the prow of the boat and stepped over to sit beside him. He took Shee's hand in his own. Shee's thoughts juddered. He lowered his lashes, and Goo Mahng reached out to fold him into his arms. It's okay. Everything's over now. It's all over. You've endured too much suffering. You've tasted too much torment. Now, it's all finally over. Morsi wrapped his arms tightly around Goo Mahng. The mist on the river was thick. They couldn't see anything clearly. All that was real was the person in front of him. He could touch him. He could be at his side. You're still alive, Morsi choked out. Goo Mahng drew back. Patting Morsi on the shoulder, he grimaced. Yes, still alive, but once this boat reaches its destination, it'll be time to go. This is the soul river of the underworld, Goo Mahng answered. We are both already... He fell silent, but Morsi understood. One of them had died in the demonic blood sea, while the other had chosen mutual destruction with the undying heart of the demon blood beast. They'd both gone to the Yellow Springs and reunited with this soul river where the calm waters ran deep. Morsi slowly gathered himself from within his earlier shock and turmoil. He gazed into Goo Mahng's blue eyes, heavy sorrow filling his heart. Yes, they were both dead, but Goo Mahng could still reincarnate while he lowered his lashes, hiding this secret that flashed across his mind. His souls would scatter and leave the wheel of reincarnation, just as the god of the reversal stone had told him. But he didn't want Goo Mahng to learn of this. This final stretch of time was all that was left of his and Goo Mahng's lives. Seeing each other like this, one last time, was a show of mercy from the heavens. He didn't want it to be spent in sadness. All along, it had been Goo Mahng who'd hidden secrets in exchange for Morsi's peace. This time, Morsi thought it was his turn to comfort Goo Mahng. He wished for Goo Mahng to reincarnate with no attachments or regrets, to have a carefree and easy next life. I'm sorry. I dragged you down to this place. Goo Mahng gazed at Morsi, pained. I still couldn't protect you properly in the end. Morsi gave him a wan smile, his voice low and a little hoarse. I chose it myself. River water splashed softly against the boat's prow. Goo Mahng, I should thank you. If it weren't for you in the beginning, I might have become a despicable person after the Moor clan fell from grace, controlled by ambition and hatred like Muzhong Chun or Hua Puan. Thank you. You were the one who saved me. Goo Mahng smiled and patted his cheek. You never would have. I didn't save you. I only saw the kindness in your heart. That was why I was willing to watch over you and stay by your side, no matter what happened with your family. He paused, and the light in his blue eyes glimmered. His voice softened, and he pressed his forehead to Morsi's. I was willing to love you. Neither of them spoke again. The drizzle whispered down upon the soul river, enclosing them in its warm glow. The two of them had loved each other half their lives, yet they had never been able to stay with each other for long. It was only in this boat, heading toward the resting place of dead souls, that they finally interlaced their fingers, confessing everything with no regard for past or future. Morsi, I've always loved you. Me too. I've always wanted to be with you. That conversation from what felt like many years ago resurfaced on the road to the Yellow Springs. As Morsi broke into a smile, his voice grew huskier and bitter. Me too. Only you. It would be nice if all my next lives had you in them. This time, Morsi said nothing. He knew that he wouldn't get a next life. But when he looked into Goo Mahng's clear azure eyes, the agony that surged into his heart was accompanied by equally intense tenderness and adoration. After a long moment, he smiled and gazed into Goo Mahng's eyes. He spoke, voice slightly pinched. They will. I'm sorry. I've hardly ever lied to you, but I have to trick you. This very last time. Goo Mahng, I wish you well. We'll see each other again. The boat drifted onward. The mist was dense, with a hazy light flashing through it. Suddenly, they heard clamorous shouting from its depths. Morsi jumped, but Goo Mahng said, Don't worry, I heard this earlier too. It's nothing dangerous. Look into the fog. Moshi turned and caught sight of other boats wavering indistinctly in the mist. When he looked closer, what he saw astonished him. Boats covered the Seoul River surface as far as the eye could see. In each sat a soldier wearing Chonghwa's old battle armor, exactly the kind of uniform the men had worn when Goo Mahng had been a great general of Chonghwa. Gradually, Moshi realized that those faces were familiar. They were smudged with blood, some very young, barely out of boyhood. They gazed back in the direction from which they had come, eyes solemn. Moshi heard drumbeats rumbling out of the mist, heard the low engraved song of Chonghwa's army echo over the surface of the Seoul River. Tens of thousands of voices converged into a steady flow, overpowering the faint Seoul farewell song that emanated from the depths of the reeds. Our sons went forth with swords held brave, their blood and bones in distant grave. Last year this self was yet intact. Last night this body spoke and laughed. Your loyalty I safely keep. Your valiant deeds I freely speak. For when these heroes' souls come home, throughout the land shall peace be known. The instant he recognized it, Moshi could no longer hold back his tears. They fell and disappeared without a trace, like the rain on this passage to the Yellow Springs. Before you woke up, this boat stopped for a long time, Goo Mahng said softly. The Yellow Springs rain fell, and the mist rose. Visions of the people I cherished most in life appeared in the mist, looking as they did when they passed through this place. I saw the brothers who lost their lives at Phoenix Cry Mountain. I saw Lu Jianxing. When Jianxing departed, he was restless. He sat on the deck, sticking his head over the side to peer into the river. Goo Mahng chuckled hoarsely. I saw Auntie Lean, my mother. She kept looking back, her cheek in her hand. I knew she was thinking of me. As he spoke, tears rolled soundlessly down his cheeks. He carelessly dashed them away. Forcing a smile, he continued. I even saw my cousin. He wanted to tell Moshi about Muzhong Chuyi, but he couldn't go on. His life had contained too much suffering. His family had passed on. His friends had scattered. Only at the very end, on the way to the Yellow Springs, could he reunite with their shades. Moshi. I saw them all. I didn't expect to be able to see them again at the end. Moshi could hear the quaver in Goo Mangh's voice. He turned toward him. Goo Mahng was looking downward, but Moshi could see the rims of his eyes were red. I was very happy. Those comrades and brothers sailing through the thick mist, those shades of heroes who died in battle at Phoenix Cry Mountain, were singing the Empire's song for martyred souls, filling this cold, wide, desolate river surface with its solemn sound. Moshi reached out, pulling Goo Mahng into his arms. He looked up at the crimson sky and softly said, It's over now. I'll stay with you for this last stretch of the journey. The rain gradually tapered off. Bars of faint golden sunlight shone through the heavy clouds, dispelling the cold of the Yellow Springs Seoul River. I'll stay with you, Goo Mahng, Moshi murmured. We still have our next lives. We still have the future. He closed his eyes, swallowing thickly. So this was how it felt to hide such a dark secret in one's heart in order to comfort someone, to keep him company, to hope he would enjoy the bliss of ignorance. Though it had been only a scant few moments for Moshi, he felt like his insides were being torn apart. Yet Goo Mahng had endured this feeling for almost 10 years, more than 3,000 days and nights. His heart ached unbearably. He lowered his head and kissed Goo Mangh's temple again and again. They didn't say anything more. Or perhaps there was nothing left that needed to be said. It was enough that they could stay with each other, tightly holding each other's hands. They'd never yearned for much else. As they continued their voyage, side by side, a familiar figure rose out of the mist, standing at the prow of his boat with his hands clasped behind his back. Moshi's heart began to pound. "Father?" he blurted out. Oh my God. Oh my God. More tincture's shade was reflected on the misty water of the yellow springs. At last, Moshi saw how his father had felt. At last, Moshi saw how his father had left the mortal realm many years ago. Mo Tincture appeared here as heroic and kindly as he was in Moshi's memories. Like Goo Mahng's mother, he looked back the way he'd come, but his expression was calm and peaceful. Worry still touched his brow as he thought of his child in the human world, that little fireball. But he knew the spirit beast he'd left behind would protect his son, Moshi. Letting out a long sigh, Mo Tincture murmured to himself, "I hope you can walk a path with a clear conscience." Father! Father! Moshi at last found his voice, hoarse with sobs as he called out to him. The 7-year-old fireball had never gotten to welcome his papa home, but now he finally had the chance to see him again. Whether out of sheer coincidence or for some deeper reason, Mo Tincture's shade gazed across time toward Moshi and Goo Mahng's boat. He smiled faintly. "Little fireball, Papa can't stay with you anymore, but Papa will always protect you." Moshi stared at him in amazement. Perhaps when Mo Tincture had sailed this stretch of the Soul River on his boat, he'd also run into the cold mist of the Yellow Springs. Perhaps he knew that when the mist came, the dead would see those they were attached to in life. That was why he'd... The boat glided forward and passed through the Yellow Springs waterfall. Moshi could no longer hear his father's voice. "Papa!" Moshi choked out. Amid the crash of falling water, Mo Tincture's shade disappeared. After the waterfall, the world changed. The cold mist disappeared, along with all those apparitions. Goo Mahng reached out to reassure Moshi, but stiffened in surprise as he glimpsed something out of the corner of his eye. Moshi pulled himself out of his sorrow and followed his gaze. "We're at the end of the Yellow Springs Road," murmured Goo Mahng. A fairy crossing overgrown with dying grass rose up on the shore ahead of them, with a silty path that stretched into the distance. The path teemed with the dead, and at its end, the city of the underworld loomed on the horizon, an eerie sight beneath the low sky. The prow of their little boat bumped gently against the sand. The journey of their life had reached its end. Everything was over. Looking back on their life was like looking at the Yellow Springs River behind them. The underworld river flowed into the east, the dead like its running waters, never to return whence they came. "Let's go." Goo Mahng rose, gripping Moshi's hand. He stepped out of the boat, then turned back with a smile. "We still have our next life." "Yes," said Moshi. "We still have our next life." He held tight to Goo Mahng's hand, caressing that familiar palm, swallowing that very last secret. Together, they stepped ashore. Their berth was different from others. Beside the spot where their little boat ran aground, there sat a man wearing a bamboo hat. As he stepped onto the sandy banks, the man rose. Presuming he had merely gotten tired of the Yellow Springs Road and had sat down to rest, neither Moshi nor Goo Mahng paid him much mind. Yet as they made their way forward, that man called out after them, "Gentlemen, please wait." Goo Mahng turned. "Moshi, Goo Mahng." The man sighed. "I've waited for you for a long time. How do you..." Moshi began to ask how he knew their names, but realized he shouldn't view this mystical place through eyes accustomed to the mortal world. He changed his question. "Sir, who are you?" The man didn't immediately respond. He held out his hand before Moshi and Goo Mahng's hesitant gazes, palm up, fingers outstretched. In the same instant, They both spied the pitch-black reversal stone sitting in the middle of his palm. Unlike before, the stone was glowing with a shimmering white light, as if a new divine power had appeared within it. Morsi raised his head to take a closer look at this man. Only a sliver of his face was visible beneath the bamboo hat. When he saw it, Morsi flinched. "It's you? From inside the reversal stone? You're that God who didn't do anything and left everything up to me." The god of the stone's spiritual form smiled faintly, his clothes fluttering in the breeze of the Yellow Springs. "Yes, I knew you two would end up here. I've been waiting for you. This reversal stone is the last thing I must give you." Goo Mahng, sharp as always, narrowed his eyes. "Oh, so you're that rotten, lying rock god?" "I guess so." "You've told all your lies, so what are you doing? Get out of the way." Goo Mahng, holding reverence for neither god nor demon, didn't bother with courtesies. "We're busy with reincarnation." "Hold on." Morsi pulled Goo Mahng back. He gazed at the god, heart pounding. He realized suddenly that he and Goo Mahng were different from the souls around them making their way down the road toward the Yellow Springs. The other souls already resembled ghosts, but he and Goo Mahng were still solid, made of flesh and blood. Could it be? Hope sparked in Morsi's eyes, his emotions surging. The god looked up from the stone and met Morsi's gaze. His eyes were calm and gentle as he regarded Morsi with a smile. "Reversal stones do exist in this world, and they can truly reverse life and death, reverse dying and pain." The god's voice was low, husky, and warm. The underworld's scarlet spider lilies swayed on either side of the Yellow Springs road, vivid as a wildfire. The god solemnly placed that glittering reversal stone into Morsi's hand. "However, I am not the one who can set it alight. Only those who have undertaken its test can do so. The final choice you made convinced the stone to submit to you." Wind rose, the plants rustled, and the clouds of the Yellow Springs drifted and scattered overhead. The god spoke to the stunned Morsi. "You get only one chance to wield the reversal powers of the stone. It belongs to you, Morsi." Goo Mahng turned toward Morsi. They exchanged a look of astonishment. A splendid sunbeam broke through the clouds, making their eyes dance with light. The next words from the man in the bamboo hat shook away the last of the gloom. "Make your wish." The little boat anchored at the shore of the Soul River swayed lightly, as if urging Morsi to speak. "Morsi, let it take the two of you home." 1 month later, in the imperial city in Chonghua's capital, Muzhong Mengzi stood in the middle of the white marbled floor carved with soaring dragons. Hands clasped primly behind her back, she watched the craftsmen hammering away in their coarse hemp clothes as they toiled to repair the destroyed royal palace. The dust of that final battle had settled, and Muzhong Mengzi had begun the process of rebuilding. She'd sent the artisans and cultivators to help the civilians rebuild their houses first. Only after Chonghua's residents were housed did she give the order for them to begin rebuilding the buildings used by the royal family. The furnaces Muzhong Chan had once displayed in the throne room were shattered, but the incense burners shaped like gold beasts with 2 delicate handles on either side were still mumbling with their last breaths. "His Imperial Majesty's fortune floods the heavens. His Imperial Majesty's glory fills the realm." The craftsmen swept the scraps of the incense burners into the sacks on their poles, then carted them away to be dumped in a wagon and thrown into the wilderness alongside with the rest of the shattered debris of the old court. "Glory fills the realm." The little golden beast whined and groaned, lying in a pile of matchwood and brick, endlessly repeating its mantra of flattery. It was only an object, after all, ignorant of its fate. Its gilt lacquer had been scraped off in the chaos, exposing the dark black steel beneath it. It was a miserable sight. Muzhong Mengzi shot a sidelong glance at the wagon laden with junk. When the terrified artisans greeted her, she offered them a warm smile. "Thank you for making the trip here." Taken aback, yet plainly delighted, the artisans answered her with a chorus of pleasantries. Muzhong Mengzi was still attired in her customary black robes with golden trim. Alone, she walked away to appraise the progress in the other halls once more. She'd asked the artisans to make them simple and modern. She, of course, knew the people of Chonghua felt a good deal of gratitude toward her for her actions. Everything dearly needed repair in the wake of the great battle, and her restraint in exercising imperial power had earned her praise and commendation. When it came to military achievement, however, the greatest praise went to Jiang Fuli, who had been the most successful in the battle against Liao. He was, after all, the one to defeat Hua Puan. Muzhong Mengzi hadn't witnessed their final duel, but the low-level cultivators present had reported that after Hua Puan lost the power of the demon blood beast, he proceeded to fight Jiang Fuli using his nine-eyed qin. Hua Puan had invoked 8 of the eyes on the qin's body, which were each in turn defeated by Jiang Fuli, but he never allowed the last eye to open. Some thought the 9th eye must have held some shockingly malevolent technique, one Hua Puan would avoid using except in the direst straits. But even in those final moments, as Hua Puan fell beneath Jiang Fuli's sword, the last eye on the 9-eyed qin remained closed. No one knew what was hidden within that eye. Hua Puan had never shown it to anyone. It was like a seed buried deep in his heart, one that would never sprout. Maybe it was just Chantang. Is Hua Puan dead? Mengzi had often heard this question in the streets and alleys, but the answers it garnered were different every time. Probably. Yes, I saw Medicine Master Jiang strike him down myself. His vital spirit shattered and turned into dust. But how can we be sure? Didn't he turn into a demon? Even if he didn't die, there's nothing he can do now. Muzhong Mengzi thought if anyone knew the answer to this question, it was Jiang Fuli, but no reply from him was forthcoming. Jiang Fuli and Su Yuzhou had left Chonghua directly after the battle. The medicine master had said he never knew who he was, and all he'd done before had no purpose other than seeking riches. Now, he'd finally accomplished something that was about more than just money, something that had been done wholly by Jiang Fuli, not Chantang, nor a puppet in his likeness. Perhaps this turn of events was what finally allowed him to travel with all of Chantang's memories intact. This time, Su Yuzhou had no need to seal away his feelings and memories. Perhaps somewhere on the long journey ahead, he would finally find an answer as to what he, Jiang Fuli, wanted in life. The medicine master wasn't the only one whose reputation had been dramatically burnished by that final battle. Wang Shujun, Muzhong Lian, now enjoyed the adulation of the city. Muzhong Mengzi knew, however, that Muzhong Lian's health was unsalvageable. His prolonged ephemera usage had siphoned years off his life. Besides, he cared for little beyond his own satisfaction. Gaining the people's recognition had fulfilled a long-abiding wish of his, but he'd long since grown weary of the affairs of the capital. When Mengzi had called at Wangshu Manor to visit him the previous evening, she'd found him drinking under the foxglove blossoms with the moon overhead. His illusion butterflies had fluttered to and fro in the courtyard, and his holy weapon, Hu Qin, lay on the stone table beside him. Muzhong Lian had finally reconciled the disparate parts of himself. He could summon to his side both the illusion techniques he loved and the music he'd once abhorred. Oh, once abhorred. Does that mean he now likes it? Lianga, will you really not consider staying in the capital? Pulling away from his pipe, Muzhong Lian shot her an indifferent glance. No, it's a tiny little capital. This lord finds it claustrophobic, too stuffy to live in. So you plan to... I'll go north and play around in the fiefdom of my mother's clan. Muzhong Mengzi pondered this for a moment and smiled. Whenever Lianga gets sick of playing, do remember to come back. I'll keep Wangshu Manor in order for you. Muzhong Lian looked at her thoughtfully. Those fluid peach blossom eyes seemed to see through to the core of her, but Mengzi's smile and earnest gaze never faltered. That won't be necessary, said Muzhong Lian. Linyi is a simple place. It hasn't seen true prosperity in ages. Your Guga has had enough of lavish fun. I'd like to accomplish something there in the future. What is Lianga thinking? It would be nice to establish an academy. What Chantang did back in the day was pretty interesting. I've had enough of being a lord. Now I want to be a headmaster. Frankly, the thought of getting called Wangshu the Wise all day tickles me. But Lianga, Muzhong Mengzi said tactfully, you know the only academy in Chonghua is in the capital. It might be difficult to manage one elsewhere. Muzhong Lian voiced no objection. He took a pull from his pipe and slowly breathed it out in Muzhong Mengzi's face. Forget it then. I should just work to strengthen the nation. I'll see if I can quit this drug, live to a ripe old age, and focus on managing Chonghua. Muzhong Mengzi laughed. What does Lianga mean by this? Of course you're going to quit ephemera, and of course you're going to live to a ripe old age. Muzhong Lian flashed her a grin. It might be harder than you think. Silence fell in the courtyard. The illusion butterflies flitted around them, alighting on Muzhong Mengzi's shoulders. Mengzi glanced at them. If Lianga wants to go, then go. After Chang'e passed, you're the acting emperor. If you want to start an academy in Linyi, she smiled. There's nothing I can do to stop you. This academy of mine will accept everyone, regardless of bloodline. It would be too boring otherwise, said Muzhong Lian blandly. What do you think? Shockingly, Muzhong Mengzi had not the slightest disagreement with this proposal. Anything Lianga wants, she said. He has to know. When she took her leave, Muzhong Lian didn't get up to escort her. It wasn't until she'd nearly disappeared around the corner of the flower-lined walkway that he knocked the ash out of his pipe and called, Mengzi, when the time comes to return to your true self, just do it. Muzhong Mengzi stiffened. Once you do, I'll be second in line. The closest person to the imperial throne was never me. It's you. Muzhong Mengzi didn't turn her head or respond. Her expression flickered. She wanted to ask, when did you learn my secret? Or even, why didn't you mention it sooner? But those thoughts crowding her mind were all overturned by Muzhong Lian's easy abandonment of the throne. To her, the only thing that mattered was Muzhong Lian forfeiting his claim. She could let go of everything else. At last, she said, Many thanks. If you need any assistance with the academy in Linyi, come to me in the capital at any time. With that, she turned to leave. Besides Xiang Fuli and Muzhong Lian, there was no one living who could compete with her in prestige. Still, the soldiers of Chonghua refused to give up hope. Their General Mo was so powerful. How could he die? Yue Chenqing led the cultivators of the Northern Frontier Army to dredge the Great River again and again, but they failed to turn up Mo Xi and Goo Mahn's bodies. The two had very likely turned to dust in the Blood Sea, but the cultivators refused to entertain the notion. They'd rather believe General Mo and Goo Mahng of the Northern Frontier Army might yet be out there, keeping that thin thread of hope alive in their hearts. On the third day after the battle, one of the soldiers finally fished something up from the Great River. It was a luminous jade scroll, transformed from the Shuaizhen whip. Though there was nothing written on it, its appearance was enough to make the Northern Frontier Army boil over with excitement. They were certain Mo Xi was still alive. Otherwise, how could Shuaizhen still be glowing? Muzhong Mengzi sat at her desk within the palace, annotating scrolls. The handmaiden Yuanyang still attended her closely, yet there was a new and fearful hesitation in the girl's eyes when she looked at Mengzi. I'm sure Mo Xi's gonna pop up. This handmaiden knew some things that others did not. Recently, Muzhong Mengzi had been invited by her good friend Zhou He for drinks. Though Zhou He was one of the emperor's men, he'd secretly harbored feelings for Mengzi for years. Now that Mo Xi was dead, he must have felt he finally had a chance. His invitation for drinks at night was more him testing the waters than proposing a chat between friends. Yuanyang hadn't expected Muzhong Mengzi to gladly accept. She'd expected even less that Mengzi would expressionlessly and without the slightest hesitation slip a dark red pill into Zhou He's cup at dinner. What? It was a fatal poison that would lie dormant for 2 months and then grant the victim a sudden death. The incident had left Yuanyang's heart in turmoil. ErHa got along so well with Mengzi and had done so much for her. Even if Mengzi disdained his attentions, was there need to secretly poison him? Was this still the princess she knew? Yuanyang. At her mistress's call, Yuanyang startled out of her frightened thoughts with a soft cry. My lady. Mengzi pinned her with a thoughtful gaze. Watching her for so long, Yuanyang's legs began to tremble. You've been distracted recently, she said with a smile. Is something on your mind? No. That's good. If you ever feel unwell, you must tell me. Don't make me worry. Yes, my lady. Also, I have a task for you. Mengzi unfastened her command token from her waist and handed it to Yuanyang. Take this token and go find Yue Chengqing. Tell him I want to borrow that jade scroll Shihajun left behind. Yuanyang acquiesced, and Mengzi sent her off with a smile. It was only after her figure disappeared that Mengzi's expression gradually darkened. Yar, she sighed. Even you I can't keep in the end. Oh my God. Mengzi was left alone in the palace hall. She took an exquisite jade scroll out of her Tiankun pouch. It was an item Jiang Yeshui had created for Muzhong Chun. He had been an unparalleled Grand Master Artificer. Even the most extraordinary cultivators would find it impossible to tell that this jade scroll was a fake. Her neat nails, devoid of cinnabar dye, caressed the golden fastening on the side of the scroll. She understood the dark schemes that were hidden in this counterfeit history recording scroll. Within it, Muzhong Chun had fabricated enough slanderous scandals to ruin Morsi. Everything had been pieced together from genuine scrolls. It would be hard to tell the difference between truth and lies. She was ready. Morsi had used the reversal stone to return to the past. There was a high chance he'd learned of the filthy deeds she'd done. No, it was more than a chance. He must have learned everything. That was surely why he used the holy weapon Shuairen to leave her a jade scroll before he died. That scroll probably smugly revealed how she, Muzhong Mengzi, was no innocent either. He must hate her for exploiting his gratitude all these years, hate her for scheming against him. Even in death, he had to tell everyone. He might even... A still more terrifying thought dawned upon Muzhong Mengzi. Her teeth chattered, shivers running down her spine. What if Morsi wasn't dead? The thought soaked her entire back in cold sweat. She could almost see that man's tall figure pacing back and forth in the shadows of the palace hall, ready to step out from the darkness and into the light. At any moment, he would stare down at her and say, Mengzi, I have a debt to settle with you. She shuddered and jolted to her feet, knocking the desk over. No, no. She ran out of the hall, leaving that eerie, frigid hall behind her. Distantly, she felt that this was odd. When she'd schemed against Muzhong Chun, Muzhong Lian, or ErHa, she hadn't felt anything like this kind of panic. It was only in this battle of wits with Morsi and Goo Mahng. Inside her cold, hardened heart was a kernel of self-loathing, and this was the source of her fear. Among all her chess pieces, these two alone were true-hearted war generals whose loyalty to their nation had never wavered. She'd stained her hands with such pristine blood. This was her stain of filth, a mark she saw whenever she bowed her head and looked inward. She would never be able to wash it off. My lady. Someone softly called to her. Mengzi snapped her head up and saw that Yuanyang had returned. She stood at the bottom of the steps, gazing fearfully up at her mistress. When she caught sight of Mengzi's bloodless face, the nervous Yuanyang jumped in fright. Trembling, Yuanyang ascended the steps and held out a brocade box. This is the jade scroll you asked for. Mengzi willed herself to calm, suppressing her fury, terror, and guilt. Oh, you're back so soon? Yes. Thank you. You can wait outside. She accepted the jade scroll Morsi left behind. Mengzi closed her eyes and retracted her steps to the palace hall. The cavernous hall was cold and empty save for herself. Mengzi locked the door, then turned her anxious, unwilling gaze upon that wordless scroll. She was certain he'd left this for her, just as she thought. When she opened the scroll with her own hands, pale golden text appeared on the originally blank surface, Morsi's elegant handwriting. She trembled with hatred. That's right. Just as I expected. No, I don't think it's just as you expected, ma'am. Morsi would seek recompense for everything, down to the last pound of flesh. He would never let her off. But in the next moment, she froze. The text on the jade scroll had sharpened. Written in the beautiful script she knew so well, there were only 2 sentences. The stain of your guilt can be cleansed with the remainder of your life. It is my hope that you do not follow in Muzhong Chan's footsteps. Muzhong Mengzi reeled as if she'd been struck. Her ears rang. What was he saying? He knew all there was to know of her dark schemes. Yet after what he'd been through, he understood that the one on the throne was rarely unsullied. The path to the top was dyed with blood and slaughter. Some who wronged those around them on their journey, once they sat upon the throne, could still reform the world and govern with benevolence. Was that true? She had once been named one of Chonghua's 3 gentlemen: virtue, wisdom, and mind. It'd been an empty title, and yet Morsi had written nothing of vengeance. She might have been false to those around her, but her virtue with regard to Chonghua might have been genuine. It is my hope that you do not follow in Muzhong Chan's footsteps. Mengzi looked at those last few words without seeing them. After a long time, she lowered her head. Do not follow in Muzhong Chan's footsteps. She picked up her counterfeit history recording jade scroll and looked at it closely. Then she channeled power into her fingertips and pinched it to dust. Mengzi collapsed back onto the throne as if a weight had been lifted. She looked up as the sweat on her back gradually cooled. The merciless battle she expected had ended before it had even begun. She stared at the ceiling, the snarling totems of dragons and tigers carved on the roof beams reflected in her dark eyes. Her fingers gripped the armrest of the throne, slowly caressing it. It is my hope that you do not follow in Muzhong Chan's footsteps. She closed her eyes, a bitter smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Morsi, you really were... She didn't complete the thought. She sat alone in the brand-new palace hall she'd personally commissioned. There were 1,000 things still to be done. Right now it was still and silent, but a new dynasty would soon be unveiled. Her heart thundered, rousing the war drums hidden in her chest for so many years, like endless waves beating against the shore. She'd been stained in blood and filth, yet the long-awaited light of the imperial Ziwei star was finally shining upon her feet. It was the height of spring. Willow boughs bent low, grasses stretched skyward, and birds fluttered from branch to branch. 2 months had elapsed since Muzhong Lian bid farewell to Muzhong Mengzi and departed the capital. Presently, he was strolling along the riverbank Linyi. He carried a willow branch he'd broken off, letting it swish slowly beside him as he walked. The academy was under construction, set to be completed roughly at the end of next year. In the past few days, he'd been more than idle. He was free as a bird, his plate completely clear. But he did have many secrets to digest, the first of which concerned Muzhong Mengzi. She was now Chonghua's acting emperor, though some inflexible, conservative old nobles continued to mock her as unworthy of the throne on account of her gender. Muzhong Lian knew that very soon, once public opinion of Mengzi had reached its peak, she would reveal a secret she had hidden for 30 years. Chonghua would surely scorn her then, but he was betting Muzhong Mengzi would be the final victor. This woman, no, this person was too formidable indeed. Ordinary people were no match for her. For the 2 months she'd been managing the court, merely as the acting emperor, she'd worked hard to strengthen the nation, taking the opportunity while the most powerful noble clans were split and weakened to enact a series of new decrees. She'd posthumously elevated Goo Mahng and Morsi to martyred heroes with the highest honors. She made plans to fulfill Goo Mangh's lifelong wish of abolishing slavery and opening the academy's doors to all. This new academy would accept disciples based on spiritual foundation and innate talent, regardless of their status at birth. She also enacted new laws to prohibit harsh governance, eliminate the appointment of extraneous family members to avoid official sinecures, ease the financial burdens of the working class, and listen to the voices of the people. In the eyes of commoners, how important would the stains on her reputation be beside the great achievements? Muzhong Mangzi. Muzhong Mangzi. Muzhong Lian said the name to himself a few times and couldn't help snorting with laughter. Muzhong Mangzi, ninth son of the imperial family. His mother feared he would be murdered by the empress in his infancy, so she concluded with a former elder of Shenong Terrace to hide his true sex with medicine. Muzhong Chun had spent a lifetime wary of Muzhong Lian, but it seemed he'd focused on the wrong person. The prophesied strife among siblings and disharmony between brothers didn't indicate Muzhong Lian at all, but rather Princess Mangzi, whom he'd always thought to be his little sister. At this thought, Muzhong Lian laughed harder. I'm with you. Muzhong Mangzi was capable of lying dormant for almost 30 years as a woman, and capable of deceiving the world for the prize of the throne. How vicious he was, possessed of such a ruthless character. There was no one who could hope to deprive him of what he wanted. Thankfully, Muzhong Lian hadn't known this secret for long. He'd only learned it during the time he'd been unconscious in Muzhong Mangzi's care. Given Mangzi's prodigious talents, with a little more time, Muzhong Lian was sure the matter of him impersonating a princess for so many years would soon be rarely mentioned. And as for those secret scandals known to so few, they would eventually be ground to dust by the passage of time. Wangshu Manor remained as it was, standing ready should Muzhong Lian ever return. Shihe Manor, in contrast, had been repurposed into a house of mercy on housekeeper Li Wei's orders, used to shelter the poor and homeless until they could stand on their own 2 feet. Oh. Li Wei said that if Shihe Juan were still alive, he would be glad to see it. Yue Chengqing stayed in the capital, but handed over to Jiang Fuli all of the mechanism diagrams Muzhong Chuyi had drawn in his lifetime. He hoped Jiang Fuli would take them far away from those who could misuse them. Blades wielded by the kind are used for protection, while those wielded by the evil become tools for slaughter, he'd said. Fourth uncle wouldn't want his diagrams to fall into the hands of those without benevolence, so I asked Medicine Master Jiang to choose somewhere safe to seal these away. Jiang Fuli sealed Muzhong Chuyi's diagrams beneath the divine Haitong tree on Chentong's immortal island, that sacred tree that had begun to gain sentience. The tree was righteous by nature, and had long gained the ability to tell good from evil. There could be no safer place to entrust Muzhong Chuyi's last wishes than with this silent guardian. Perhaps in decades or centuries, or even a millennium, another Grand Master Artificer with a heart as kind as Muzhong Chuyi's might emerge in the mortal world, capable of carrying on his legacy of boundless compassion. These people had grand ideals. Muzhong Lian did not. He was an ordinary man with countless flaws. He was no hero, nor did he care much about things outside his control. At the moment, he merely wanted to build his own academy and teach his incoming disciples the 6 virtues, 6 arts, and 6 teachings that all gentlemen must master. Maybe he would end up with a student like Cheng Tang or Hua Poan. There was much he couldn't plan for, but there was one thing he could ensure. In fact, he'd made it the first doctrine of his academy. All students would be taught according to their aptitude. As the headmaster, he would never let those whose talents lay in illusion techniques be forced to cultivate with the qin. It was good to be in charge. Muzhong Lian sighed with satisfaction. He brushed some dust from his robes and coughed before moseying his way home. When he passed through the bustling market streets, he spied an old man selling meat pies. They were crisp and golden brown, calling to mind those famous pastries at the northern frontier. Muzhong Lian glanced at the stall and stopped. "Hey, old man, get me a pie." "All righty." Muzhong Lian seemed to hesitate for a moment. "Make it 2. Delighted, the old man scooped up 2 golden brown and crispy pies to hand to him. But Muzhong Lian didn't leave. He stood for a while longer before adding with great reluctance, "Never mind. Make it 3. The old man blinked. Is it because he's going to run into them? Because I've been feeling like that. Somebody's going to run into them. And I've been thinking it's going to be him, but I was like, maybe I'm wrong. And I'm probably still wrong. Anyway, let me flip the page. With 3 piping hot pastries in hand, Mu Zhonglian made his way home. He'd merely bought them because it was convenient, he told himself. He hadn't been thinking of anyone in particular. He wasn't thinking of them as family. Not at all. Regardless of how Mu Zhonglian disdained them, there were 2 people secretly living in his house. They'd come to call on the 3rd day he arrived in Linyi and scared him half to death. If their old friends from the capital heard these 2 were still alive, Mu Zhonglian scoffed. Who knew what might follow? He strolled the whole way home. When he pushed open the door, he found someone in the corridor, moving a little stool into place so he could hang up a colorful lantern. The man wore robes of blue and white, his long hair tied high on his head. He was grinning from ear to ear, his skin the healthy gold of barley, his features handsome and sweet. When he heard Mu Zhonglian entering, he lowered his long lashes and looked at him in the flickering lantern light. His black eyes glittered like the dazzling night sky. Mu Zhonglian gnashed his teeth in frustration. Goo Mahng, could you have some self-awareness? You're a guest hiding in my manor. Who gave you the right to change the decor? The man busy hanging flower lanterns in the hall was none other than the General Goo whom everyone had presumed dead. Goo Mahng. Before Goo Mahng could reply, another man emerged from the hall. He was tall and elegantly handsome, his skin as pale and clear as ice, also wearing the rough-spun cloth robes of commoners. Who else could this man be but Mo Xi, whose whereabouts were unknown? Mo Xi was holding a newly made lantern. He handed it to Goo Mahng, who grinned as he reached over from his perch on the chair. Thanks, Mo Xi. You're welcome. Mu Zhonglian fumed. You 2 really think that this is your home, don't you? Yep, Liandi. Goo Mahng, are you tired of living? You're going to be a headmaster soon. We've come to help you teach your disciples. Even if we use fake names, we still have all our skills. You're getting them for a bargain. We're family, after all. Goo Mahng hung up the lantern and hopped down from the stool, ducking as Mu Zhonglian took a swing at him. Hey, we're all family here. So, if you have something to say it nicely, all right? Who's your family? Who's going to speak nicely to you? Goo Mahng cackled and dashed away down the corridor. Mo Xi stood speechlessly, watching the 2 of them, a slight grimace on his face. Perhaps when people said survivors of great tragedy got a new lease on life, this was what they meant. When Mo Xi chose to die with the demon blood beast, he'd been prepared for eternal damnation. The god of the reversal stone had told him his soul was doomed to scatter on the wind, forever excluded from the wheel of reincarnation. He'd never expected a trip down the Yellow Springs River would result in a chance to return to life. The god of the reversal stone hadn't been as powerless as everyone thought. Even if he was merely a flickering remnant of the deity that created the stone, saving the lives of a few mortals posed no challenge, especially when their bodies were still full of the potent spiritual energy of both spirit and demon beasts. But to attain the reversal stone's salvation, the mortals in question had to save themselves. Only those who redeemed their own hearts and passed the reversal stone's trial would gain its protection and be brought ashore. It could reverse wounds, reverse pain, reverse a heart that had been destroyed, reverse eyes that had paled to azure blue, even reverse death itself. It was the show of remorse and the recompense given by the god of the reversal stone to the chosen tool of fate. By the end of the Soul River, on the Yellow Springs Road, Mo Xi had taken the reversal stone, which glowed with divine light. He'd made his wish and asked it to complete the last step of its mission on Earth. Its magic had made Goo Mahng's body hale and whole again, as if he'd never undergone black magic tempering. It had restored both Mo Xi and Goo Mahng's lives, and only waited to send them wherever they wanted. Where do you wish to go? In the midst of rumbling echoes of the realm of the reversal stone, Mo Xi and Goo Mahng, reunited after untold calamity, looked at each other. Goo Mahng grinned. I'll go wherever you go. Goo Mahng will never trick you again. It's all over. I'm no longer a spy, a traitor, or even a general. I'm no one but Goo Mahng. You're Gu Shishong. You're Goo Mahng. I only need to protect you. I only need to stay with you. Where they wanted to go was, of course, away from the capital. The capital's hegemony would sustain itself for thousands of years, the city plagued by schemes and manipulations. Now that the Liao Kingdom's army had retreated, Chonghua welcomed a long-lasting peace. Moxi had thrown the Shuairan Jade Scroll into the river to tell Mengzi one thing. He had no interest in vengeance or conflict, but he would always be watching what Chonghua would become in the hands of its new ruler. Muzhong Mengzi had not yet proven himself unworthy of this opportunity. He was by no means a pure-hearted idealist, but his goals and Muzhong Chun's had never aligned. Muzhong Chun yearned to rule as the supreme overlord of the 9 provinces, while Muzhong Mengzi sought to be known as a virtuous ruler and a wise monarch. He would commit unscrupulous deeds in service of his ambition, but he would also exhaust himself for this goal, devoting his entire life to his cause. That was enough. In the end, they chose to go to Linyi. It wasn't a particularly prosperous place, but they'd heard Muzhong Lian had chosen to establish an academy there, a new school that would accept everyone, regardless of background. Goo Mahng had been delighted. Aside from Moxi, Muzhong Lian was the person closest to him. He was his family by blood. Goo Mahng couldn't be happier with the choice Muzhong Lian had made. Now, Moxi stood in the courtyard, watching Goo Mahng and Muzhong Lian chase each other around like children. The foxglove blossoms drifted down in a lilac waterfall, filling the courtyard with their sweet scent. Vengeance had faded, and achievements, too, were distant memories. In truth, neither Moxi nor Goo Mahng cared much for the honors Muzhong Mengzi had bestowed on them. Their earliest wishes had already come true. An era of equality would begin, and they'd kept that first promise between them. They had a home together. Tomorrow, he and Goo Mahng would go to the academy Muzhong Lian built to take a look and walk around. Perhaps soon afterward, they would appear in front of those young and childish juniors with new names and faces, and teach them about the righteous path and about benevolence, about the purpose behind casting spells and wielding weapons. Everything was changing for the better in the wake of those turbulent waves. Many years in the future, the imperial court might decline or dissolve, and the world might sink into chaos once more. But just as Chantang had chosen to die with a demon, and as Moxi and Goo Mahng had thrown themselves into a sea of blood to preserve the realm, so long as there was darkness, there would also be light. The kindness and strength of humanity was a seed that would never wither, one that would awaken and sprout even in the harshest conditions. Throughout turbulent eras and prosperous years, brave heroes and brilliant artists had always come from nothing, and they would all eventually be buried beneath nameless grasses. When the currents of time had rushed by and the storm clouds had rolled past to leave the skies clear, all that passion and spilled blood would be remembered as no more than a few sentences in a book. Human lives were small and fleeting. A person's hard work and sacrifice were rarely carved into eternal remembrance. But the sun would always shine again, driving away the long dark of night. Living in peace was perhaps the greatest tribute future generations could give in honor of the shades of those unsung heroes. In the courtyard, Goo Mahng had been cornered. He let out a shout, laughing. Moxi, come in and help me out. Lianti is being a brat. Huh. Who are you calling your D? Raged Muzhong Lian. This lord was born first. I was conceived before you. Stop right there, Goo Mahng. Get the hell out of my house. Moxi, come here. Help me beat him up. Moxi gazed downward, his thick lashes fanning over his cheekbones. He smiled and started forward. Sure, I'm coming. The foxglove tree swayed against the whitewashed wall. The beauty of the mortal world was once again in splendid bloom. The Liao Kingdom was defeated, and their soldiers had surrendered. The nation that had once been part of Chonghua was returned to its oversight and designated a vassal territory. As for its dark magic, it was sealed away. Those demonic weapons stained with blood and sin would not again be so easily created, and those black magic techniques would not be so easily taught. Moshi knew it wouldn't last forever, but at the very least, they'd ushered in a peace worthy of their martyred heroes. In the little courtyard, the black dog Fan Do, whom Mu Zhonglian had brought from the capital, charged at them. Barking exuberantly and wagging its tail, he gamboled around the trio. In this city that had not yet attained its future prosperity, kitchen smoke rose from the houses of Lin Yi and floated toward the horizon. The rays of the setting sun touched a picture of lovely serenity. "Don't even think about it, Fireball!" shouted Mu Zhonglian. "This is a fight between brothers. You're no man if you intervene." Goo Mahng hopped up to hook an arm around Mu Zhonglian's neck and laughed. "How about this? Moshi can be on my side and Fan Do can be on yours." The prospect excited Fan Do, who put his paws on Mu Zhonglian's knee and stared at him with huge liquid eyes, tongue lolling. A gale of laughter drifted out of the courtyard. At last they had a home, a family, somewhere to stay and put down roots. They could stand guard over this hard-won peace, watch spring come and flowers bloom, see winter's arrival and the first fall of snow. Before them stretched years of tranquil days like these, the tinkling of bells from trade caravans in the distance and moonlight to guide the fishermen home, a peace that spanned from the northernmost sands of the desert to the southernmost reaches of the great rivers, and so on into the boundless future. Chapter 196. Beyond the Finale. The Academy's construction. The first academy in Chonghua to accept all students regardless of their birth was built in Linyi and named Wangshu Academy. Mu Zhonglian's influence featured prominently in the academy's design. It was a space filled with fluttering petals, dancing butterflies, and long, meandering walkways. Translucent drapes hung everywhere, swaying lazily in the wind. Viewed from above, the academy spanned half of a wooded mountain and looked as if it had been built within the misty realm of clouds, like a dream that had come drifting out of the end of a pipe. The headmaster of the academy had an eccentric disposition and a capricious temperament. During the academy's construction, Mu Zhonglian had popped over for visits at every opportunity, providing his thoughts and opinions on any and all matters. "Make the music pavilion smaller. Why is it so big? Trust me, there aren't that many people who like music cultivation." "Yes, that's what I said. Shrink the music pavilion and enlarge the illusions terrace." Wangshu Juan," the frightened foreman answered. "There's a hill next to the illusions terrace. It can't be enlarged." "So what? Blow it up." "There's another hill beside that one." "Blow that one up too." "There's a little village beside the hill that's beside the other hill." "Blow it, oh, wait, that won't do." Pipe dangling from his mouth, Mu Zhonglian yanked the blueprints closer and swept an imperious eye over the design. "All right, whatever. The illusions terrace can be that size for now. It's fine." The foreman blinked. "You can understand the blueprints while holding them upside down?" Moshi felt nothing but disdain for Mu Zhonglian's behavior. The first time he entered the academy, he'd expected to be inspired by a school that took in all learners, and imagined he'd be faced with a sense of duty and fulfillment upon meeting these keen and questing eyes. But after accompanying Mu Zhonglian on a visit to the mountain to watch the craftsmen at work, all he saw was the headmaster making a bunch of nonsensical requests. "The headmaster's hall must be unique. It can't look like the one in the capital's academy. I don't want a single brick copied from there. The garden grounds must be unique as well. They should be huge and full of winding paths so the disciples can flirt in privacy. Yes, you heard me. That's what young people should be getting up to. Remember to plant a lot of foxglove trees. They're pretty. Make sure to leave enough space to put up canopy drapes. I want you to build outdoor corridors to connect all 9 halls. Why? No reason in particular. I just don't like being in the sun." Goo Mahng was flabbergasted. "Have you calculated the costs? Can we afford all this?" "What are you afraid of?" said Mu Zhonglian. "If we can't, we'll get the money from Mengzi. The more flamboyantly wasteful I am, the more Spartan and saintly he'll look. He'll love that. Trust me. I wouldn't know how to be emperor, but I've perfected the art of wastrel lording." He took a drag from his pipe. Goo Mahng snatched it away before he could take another. He hid the pipe behind his back and beamed at Muzhong Lian. "You agreed to take 10 puffs a day. You've had your 10. You can have more tomorrow." Muzhong Lian gaped at him, then turned to Mo Xi. "Mo Xi, pass me the candied fruit." Mo Xi took in Muzhong Lian's scowling face and produced a package of candied fruit from his Qiankun pouch. This was a trifle from Jiangfu Li. It could suppress Muzhong Lian's cravings. He handed it to Goo Mahng, who smiled, grabbed the back of Muzhong Lian's head, and shoved it into his mouth. "This tastes awful," Muzhong Lian sputtered. "It'll make you live longer." Goo Mahng grinned. "My dearest headmaster, you ought to focus on your health. Pfft, get lost." Day by day, the academy came to life, turning their old dreams into reality. For Muzhong Lian, this academy filled his dream of taking control of his own life. Here, everyone's interests were respected, and they could all choose the path that they wished to walk. For Mo Xi, the academy gave him and Goo Mahng a rightful claim to their new identities. It became a home they shared, as well as the future of which they'd dreamed in those destitute years in the army. For Goo Mahng, Wangshu Academy meant even more. Once upon a time, he and Mo Xi had walked along a dike in the slanting light of dusk. He'd plucked a blade of foxtail grass, flicking it across the meadows. At that time, he'd silently accepted the feelings Mo Xi had expressed for him, while harboring his own spark of pathetic yearning. He wished, delusionally, he'd thought, that someday, in the future, the two of them could share a lasting companionship despite the disparity of their status. Once upon a time, he'd laughed with Lu Danxing as they split a jug of kumis wine around the bonfire. When he'd talked with Lu Danxing, a blaze had turned in his heart. He'd hoped this flame in his chest could become a wildfire that cleared away the world's brambles and weeds. Once upon a time, when he was a little slave in Wangshu Manor, he'd had a burning dream. He'd hoped that there'd come a day when everyone would be equal, no matter the circumstances of their birth. He'd hoped that people without a drop of hero's blood would still be respected, that every flower's seeds could sprout and grow. Now, that fertile soil was finally theirs. Drinking in the Starry Night. Wangshu Academy was completed in the second year after Mo Xi and Goo Mahng began their new lives incognito. That night, Goo Mahng was drinking wine beneath the starry sky when he heard the sound of billowing cloth and a familiar deep voice from behind him. "It's late. What are you doing out here?" Goo Mahng turned. Mo Xi had leapt up with Qinggong, floating like a kite before landing lightly on the ink-dark tiles. This was the tallest building in Wangshu Academy, known as Wangyue Tower. It had quickly become one of Goo Mahng's favorite spots. In the past 2 years, as Mo Xi and Goo Mahng had watched the Cultivation Academy spring up from the ground, like a beauty applying her makeup, gradually attaining delicate features and exquisite detail, manifesting in concrete form the lines in the blueprints, their hearts had become more and more at peace. Linyi was far from the capital. The tales of the nobles infighting reached them here and there, but by the time such stories completed the long journey, they were so faded they seemed as moonlight spilling onto the windowsill or wind blowing past their ears. They could smell the faint scent of blood in the air, but it had nothing much to do with them. The capital squabbles took place in the realm separated from them by a veil. When night fell over the 9 provinces, one side of the veil glimmered with power and wealth, while the other was filled with the warm bustle of domestic life. Goo Mahng lounged on the roof tiles, a warmed jug of pear blossom white wine at his side. He smiled as he poured Mo Xi a cup. "In 2 days, the academy will officially open. I was just thinking we have no idea how noisy things will get. I'm looking forward to it." Mo Xi stepped closer, draping the coat he'd brought over Goo Mahng's shoulders before taking a seat beside him. They'd gazed down together at the sprawling grounds of Wangshu Manor. Goo Mahng had his cheek propped in his hand. "To be honest, whenever I sit here, I want to laugh every time I look down. Lian Di really spared no expense." Mengzi probably hates him. I heard that, to set an example and lower the palace's operational costs, Mengzi even stopped using rare incenses, whereas Liandi wishes for nothing more than to pave the Academy's paths in gold. Goo Mahng burst out laughing. It's not that bad, but he paused, his long, soft lashes fluttering as he gazed tenderly at Morsi beneath the pristine light of the moon. You finally learned to crack a joke. It was awkward, yet somehow moving to be studied so closely like this. Morsi bent to kiss him, then quickly averted his gaze to stare down at the arching terraces, the towers and pavilions. He looked so serious, but for the faint pink flush on his cheeks, it would have been impossible to tell he'd just kissed Goo Mahng. He was still so easily embarrassed. Sighing inwardly, Goo Mahng looked at him. Why was it that, no matter how many years passed, no matter how much they'd experienced, his morshardy was still so adorably stuffy? This man had a puddle of sweet honey in his heart, but he hid it away, refusing to let anyone discover it. Even after all these years, Goo Mahng could see the shadow of that pretty youth on Morsi, the one from the Academy of Chonghua, sitting alone beneath the tree and taking delicate nibbles of his white rice zongzi, his nape soaked with hot sweat from training and his bangs fluttering in the breeze. When that young man turned, his eyes were as pure and clear as the first light of dawn. Affection welled in his chest. He stretched lazily. Morsi, I want to count stars. It was clearly not the first time they'd had this conversation. Morsi patted him on the head. Lie down, then. Goo Mahng lay down on the roof with his head in Morsi's lap, gazing up at the brilliant silver river of the Milky Way. He reached up, feeling the night wind slip through his fingers like silk ribbons. He counted those splendid, dazzling stars. 1, 2, 3. 3 was a legend that said a new star appeared in the sky whenever a hero passed away. Goo Mahng counted the 70,000 stars that belonged to him, listening to him murmuring those numbers that meant much more. Perhaps, in some far-flung corner of the world, a few of those heroic souls had already reincarnated. Those brothers they'd ridden with, Lu Jianxing and the others. Perhaps they'd one day return to their side. Perhaps they'd become disciples at Wangshu Academy, leaving the darkness of the past and stepping into a beautiful light of the present. By midnight, the air was chilly, and Goo Mahng's pear blossom white was nearly gone. His voice had faded into a drowsy whisper as he gradually slipped into slumber. Morsi looked down upon his sleeping face. Goo Mahng had at last stopped sleeping with a furrow in his brow. His expression betrayed no trace of fear or hurt, but his mouth was still moving. He was still counting the stars. You can count them again tomorrow, Morsi told him gently. We still need to prepare some things for the Academy's opening in the morning. I'll carry you back. Goo Mahng mumbled his agreement, but continued. Cousin, Chunxing. Sorrow flickered in Morsi's eyes. But that, too, was soon engulfed by endless warmth. He tidied the cup of Goo Mahng's half, then looked up at the twinkling stars. They'll see you, he said, and they'll definitely return to your side. Soon, more than 1,000 disciples would enter the academy, and yet more would join every year. Perhaps they would bear the reincarnated souls of old friends, comrades, and cherished brothers. Ooh, another picture extending across 2 pages. This time, regardless of their status, regardless of whether they were rich or poor, they would receive equal treatment and patient teaching. This was paid for with your blood and tears. Will you come back? Will you witness it? The night was deep. Goo Mahng had finally fallen asleep, and Morsi didn't have the heart to wake him. He carefully gathered Goo Mahng into his arms. The night wind ruffled Morsi's robes as he leapt down from the tower. Sensing the movement, Goo Mahng nuzzled closer into his warm embrace and fell still. Between the vast heavens and earth, the 2 figures faded into insignificant shadows. He took him home. Establishing the academy. The day before the academy's official opening, within the Wangshu residence in Linyi, Mu Zhonglian, Morsi, and Goo Mahng gathered to discuss a matter of grave importance: their titles. Mu Zhonglian was not in question. Naturally, he would be Headmaster Wang Shu. The problem was Mo Xi and Goo Mahng. These two couldn't reappear in public with their old identities. Thankfully, disguise techniques posed no difficulty for either of them, but their titles were a subject worthy of discussion. The three of them talked and argued for a while. Eventually, Mu Zhonglian made the unilateral decision that, upon becoming elders of the academy, Mo Xi would be known as Yaoling Dongjun, after the god of the easterly sun. Goo Mahng would be named Qingguang Elder, after the pure radiance of the moon. Goo Mahng was quite satisfied with his current life, and similarly pleased with his sobriquet. The only one who couldn't abide it seemed to be Mo Xi. Why should he go by Qingguang? Mo Xi narrowed his eyes, staring at Mu Zhonglian with his arms crossed before his chest. Qingguang is a variation of Wang Shu. What do you mean by this? Mu Zhonglian sneered. What's the alternative? Should we use a variation of Shihe? Chiwu Elder? The Golden Crow? Goo Mahng shook his head. It sounds terrible. I'd vote for Qingguang. Mo Xi's eyes widened in disbelief at Goo Mahn's betrayal. Goo Mahng, you... Pleased, Mu Zhonglian reached out to sling an arm around Goo Mahng's shoulders. He's my little brother. If he isn't named after me, should he be named after you? That's not it, Goo Mahng said earnestly. I just think Qingguang sounds better than Chiwu. I think so too. This made Mo Xi so angry he went through the whole pot of books when he returned, trying to find a variation of Shihe that sounded more elegant. But no matter how much he searched, Wang Shu still won. In the end, he threw his hands up in defeat. Early the next morning, the sun shone brilliantly down over the new academy, a magnificent dawn. Amid the solemn tolling of bells, Wangshu Academy opened its heavy doors carved with celestial motifs. Mu Zhonglian stood on the welcome terrace, painted in red and embellished in gold. Clad in graceful sapphire robes, he gazed down at the young disciples entering the academy. Beside him, Mo Xi and Goo Mahng stood shoulder to shoulder, the refreshing morning breeze brushing through their hair. They looked just like the elders who had once taught them magic in the Imperial Academy. As they welcomed the brand new lives, those sparks of potential. They're so little! Goo Mahng's eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. The youngest child beneath the welcome terrace couldn't have been older than 7 or 8. Many had obviously come from poor families. They wore patched clothes of hemp and stumbled in apprehensively, gazing at everything with curiosity and anticipation like tiny cubs venturing out into the forest for the first time. Their new disciples were like a school of little fish that had come pouring in from every lake and ocean, gathering together in this glorious, hard-won pool. There were no strict rules or restrictions on behavior. With so many children present, a few entertaining incidents would be expected as a matter of course. A particularly young disciple was wandering about. As he looked around, his terror became more and more apparent. Finally, he burst into tears, attracting everyone's attention. Guga! Guga, where did you go? I can't find you anymore. Xiong, you left your little brother behind, someone called. Amid muffled laughter, the elder brother turned back, red-faced, to find his sibling sobbing his heart out. Another child chased someone through the crowd, yelling anxiously, Nangong! Nangong? Wait, what? I'm sorry, y'all. Okay. Nangong! Nangong! Wait for me! He ran too quickly and tripped, falling flat on the ground. Mo Xi blinked. Goo Mahng burst into laughter, turning back to look at his lover and his brother. Neither looked as relaxed as he was. They were plainly beginning to doubt how successful this school full of commoners would be. As Goo Mahng watched their stiffening expressions, he couldn't help laughing more freely, clutching his stomach as he wheezed. We'll manage. We'll manage. Mu Zhonglian swept his sleeves and gritted his teeth. You can handle their discipline in the future. We've clearly welcomed a herd of idiots. I'll do it. Instead of objecting, Goo Mahng enthusiastically raised his hand. Mo Xi shot him a glare. Forget it. If you're in charge, in a year, these disciples will be even worse. Goo Mahng fell silent. The sun climbed in the east as they chatted, shining down on Wangshu Manor, gilding its tiles and filling its grounds with brilliance. The three of them watched as more and more disciples followed the teaching cultivators toward the training ground painted with a yin-yang design. There, they would wait for their new lives to begin. The bell in the tower rang 18 times, once each for the 6 teachings, 6 arts, and 6 virtues. When the final toll faded, Mu Zhonglian snorted and swept out his sapphire blue robes. Using Qinggong, he leapt up from the welcome terrace, clearing the roofs and towers and landing gracefully before the hall on the martial field amid his disciples' cries and shock of admiration. Moxie stared, at a loss for words. Goo Mahng shook his head helplessly and smiled. It's the same old Mu Zhonglian. Let's go too, said Moxie. Okay. The two of them looked at each other, fingers interlaced between their wide sleeves. They descended the steps of the welcome terrace beneath the radiant sunlight and walked toward their future. The reversal stone hung as a pendant on Goo Mangh's chest. The little gem had lost its light and completed its mission. It would never be capable of reversing fate again. Yet it was a token of their love that had taken them through life and death. It had borne witness to their journey through worlds above and below, their refusal to separate in the face of the cruelest trials, and now, to the happiness that was theirs at last. In the morning sun, the light crystal glimmered, scattering flecks of brilliance over Goo Mangh's clothes. Dark and dazzling, just like Goo Mangh's eyes, black once more. They had experienced the deepest darkness, yet today they shone with the brightest light in the world. Well, that concludes the reading of the official story of Remnants of Filth. All that's left now are the extras. I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I did not take notes because I was just so devastated and I'm exhausted emotionally, not physically. And so I was just like, I'm just gonna read this and we'll just see where things go. So my notes are, or my thoughts probably are going to be all over the place. And I guess the only thing I can say about this whole, this gemstone or whatever it was called, I already forgot what it was called. Hold on. The pendant, the reversal stone. Yeah, that's what you call it. I was devastated after the last chapter of chapter 191 that we read, where basically it was like, nope, we can't change fate. And then this chapter, I have to say, was not surprising, but just, I don't know, like when I read it, I just wasn't surprised at all. If you hear this, you guys, it's just me turning like my pages or whatever. So, of course, we have him meeting with Goo Mahng in the past and seeing that, oh yeah, he was the one that, tore out his souls. He was the one that gave him the pouch. And it was such a beautifully tender moment. I did love it so much. It was a beautiful, I would call that a bittersweet moment. And then, of course, moving into chapter 192 with you, where I guess the God inside of the reversal stone finally reveals the truth. This is the chapter, I'm sorry, that I meant that I read it and I just kind of didn't have a reaction. And that's everything to do with Princess Mengzi. So I'm not going to say too much. The only thing that I can say is I'm not surprised. I wasn't expecting Princess Mengzi to have done what she did, but I'm not surprised. There was someone in the comments in volume 4. I can't remember who they were, but they had stated that they were actually very suspicious of Muzhong Mengzi because she, which now we know is he, but at the time she just seemed a little too goody two shoes, considering all of the remaining Muzhong family was twisted or did something so bad or whatever. And I was telling her like, I think Mengzi's okay. Like, I'm cool with Mengzi. I'm going to assume that she's not going to be like the two of them. Like, I'm not going to lump her in with them, but I'm not ruling it out because anything can happen, And it was one of those things where I was just like, I'm hoping it won't be the case, but I won't be shocked if it is the case. And ultimately, I'm going to say it's still not the case. Like, so Mujong Mangza is not a villain in this story. I'm happy about that. I did not want her to be a villain. I do understand that she had her hand in some of the trauma that Goo Mahng has experienced, and that is very sucky. But at the end of the day, I I still have a level of respect for her. And I'll just leave it at that for now. We can talk more in depthly about it in our recap and discussion and aspects of Yu as a series. But to know that she is actually doing things for the good of the country, she just unfortunately needed to get her hands dirty first in order to accomplish those things. I'm at least glad that she is honoring what Goo Mahng wanted in life, you know, all of those things that she's changing. And like even something as simple as, I think, yeah, page 89, where rebuilding of the palace needed to take place. But it said that only after Chonghua's residents were housed did she give the order for the craftsmen to begin repairing the building that was used by the royal family. So it's like, okay, she's not completely innocent. But we don't live in a black and white world. We live in a world where there's black, white, and gray. I'm going to put her in the gray area, and we'll just leave it at that for now. So that, again, that kind of took me by, not surprise. It threw me for a tiny little loop. I'll just put it that. I don't know how to put it. But at the end of the day, she's clearly doing some things that are good. And it was just crazy that, I'm trying not to ramble. It's just crazy. We'll talk more about it at another time. The other thing I can say is, boy, was I devastated when they were on the Huang River together. Huang Shui. Oh, I mean Huang He. And that's Yellow River, by the way. And, you know, Goo Mahng was like, we've got our next lives ahead of us. And Moshi was like, yeah, we do, but we really don't. I was crying so hard. And then them seeing the soldiers and singing the solemn song and then seeing his dad. Oh my God. I was broken. Like, it was one of those moments also that was really bittersweet for me. Like, I was so sad, but it was also really beautiful. I had complicated feelings about it because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be their last moment together. Like, Moshi's not going to be able to reincarnate. And I was so sad, but at the same time, I don't know. I was like, I guess this is a more realistic ending then, I guess. And I would be okay with that. Like, I would not like it necessarily, but I was going to be okay with it. Only for, you know, things to turn around and that actually not be what happened. You know, the reversal stone god was like, hey, it was a test and you passed with an A+. So now you can't reverse everything. I was like, actually, when he said it, it was crazy. I think by that point I was numb. I was like, okay, whatever. You're saying this, but like, it's not happening. It's not. And even after that moment, when we went to, you know, Muzhong Mengzi talking to Muzhong Lian, and then, you know, it was talking about all the other characters and stuff, I'm like, see, they're not coming back. And then I was like, okay, maybe, but no, they're not coming back. Like, I honestly did not have hope for seeing Goo Mahng and Mosi again. Even if I knew that it would happen, my brain told me that they were gone. And that was just going to be the end of that. So, for them to come back, I was very happy. And it was interesting because when it started talking about Mu Zhonglian in Linyi, my brain told me that he was going to find Moxi and Goo Mahng like by the river or something, passed out or something like that. It's what I thought was going to happen. But turns out they were already there. I was like, okay, cool, they're alive. So I was like, got it. So they're going to be teachers at the academy then. Only for me to be right. I mean, obviously I couldn't share that while I was reading, but I thought that was cool. And just seeing their little dynamic with each other, I think it's adorable. And to know that Fondo is still there, I appreciate Fondo being there. Because he's been there for Goo Mahng like this whole time, you know? So just a random little side character. But I'm glad. Oh, speaking of side characters, Liwei. Can Liwei get any better? That's all I have to say. This man is my favorite side character. Hands freaking down. He is such a great and honorable person. And I'm so glad that he has, he was there by Morsi all those years and that he learned his master, really knew who he was, And then after his master was gone, he was like, I think this is what he would like. He would love this. So let's honor him by having a place where the poor people who are down on hard times can be housed until they get themselves back on their feet. Like, it was so beautiful. Oh my God. Y'all, this story was so beautiful. I'm so sorry. I'm crying again. It was just so interesting. I'm sorry I'm going backward because, like, when they were on the river, I just remembered when Morsi saw his dad, and that moment just cut me to the core because literally yesterday I was on the phone with my dad and he was telling me that he had a dream about his dad, my papa. And my papa didn't know that he was dead. And so he had to like explain to him that he was dead. And it was so like painful. And so reading the part about Moishi seeing his dad, but his dad like not really seeing him for real, it was just like, oh my God. Anyway, I digressed. I went back. This academy. Okay, this academy. I'm proud of Mu Zhonglian for how far he's come and for him finally getting to a place in his life where he doesn't feel like he has to live the life that his mother created for him, the one that she like forced down his throat and wanted him to be. And now he's at a point where he doesn't feel silenced. And y'all have no idea how important to me that is. Like the way that parents, especially like when it comes to mothers, abuse their children by inflicting so much trauma onto them. Not all of them, of course, obviously, but it creates such hardship and deluded mindset in their children. And we saw that in Mu Zhonglian. And like, there are some villains I've read about or bad guys, and I'm just like, I don't care why they're bad. I just want them to be gone or to meet their punishment. But with Mu Zhonglian, I wanted to know his story. And I guess it was because a part of me felt like he was redeemable in some kind of way. And so to see him say that he wants to start a school that anyone can come to, it doesn't matter their birth, their status, that everyone is going to be treated equally, and just thinking about everything that he did to Goo Mahng, but knowing that that was all forced upon him, that was indoctrinated into him, to see him finally like let go of that indoctrination, to finally be free and be his own person. I'm so sorry. Like, I know what it's like to live with that indoctrination, where you just believe that what is before you is it. And you go into your 20s still thinking this way. I mean, they were older than that. But to see him finally be free of the shackles that his mother had put on him was just like so beautiful. And it made me so happy. And I'm so glad that like he and Goo Mahng get to have a good brotherly relationship with each other. I'm sorry. I'm just like, this was so good. And it's so crazy because I was just talking to my sister earlier today and I told her like, I'm done. I don't want to finish reading this because I feel like the author is just being mean to me for no reason and I'm pissed. And she was like, I love it when authors piss me off. That means it's really good. And I was like, but I feel like it's too much. Like, yes, I love all the heartache and torment and the twists and turns that I've gone through while reading this, that we've gone through. But at that point, I was just like, oh, I'm on the final volume, man. And still there's no hope in sight after those first two chapters. But like, I feel like it was still worth it in the end, like they got their happy ending and it came about in a realistic way. Like I'm not mad that they didn't die, because that was my theory. I said, okay, they're gonna die together and that's how they're going to be together. And I was like preparing myself to be okay with that. But I think the way that they were brought back to life is perfectly reasonable. And so in the end, I think it was worth it. Do we still have more to read? Yes, but it's just extras. And I don't know what those are going to entail, but I do think that getting to the end of the main story, it was well worth like the tears and the snot and the sniffles that are still going on right now. So I hope you all enjoyed like just the story overall, because there's so much to learn. And I can't speak on all this now because I've got to organize my thoughts and we'll talk about it live. But there's so much to learn within you that I want to discuss with you all. So many takeaways. So really quickly, I do just want to go ahead and let you guys know, like I said, the rest of this book is extra, and it's one extra but several chapters. And so I do see a little note here to just let you know what it's going to be, and then I'll read it again probably at the beginning of the other video. But just so you all know, the extra Dream of Youth is a set in a semi-alternate universe. So we're not going to be getting like a continuation of what we have now. It's going to be a bit different. And I'm skipping over some of it, but it says that then perhaps Remnants of Filth would have started like this. So it's basically going back in time. We're not getting any more fluff and stuff, I guess, from the current Moshi and Goo Mahng and Muzhonglian. So anyway, I'll see you all next time, and have a great day and or lovely night. And well, Einiman.